Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the, what's today's date? The March 11th, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting. Before we get going, if everyone could stand for our invocation and our pledge of allegiance, please.
Almighty God, we humbly come before you while acknowledging your sovereignty over all things. We thank you for your presence in this room. We also thank you for your blessings on our community. Father, as we ponder and consider the tasks of governance within our community, we ask you to guide our thoughts and hearts. And Lord, we ask that you will grant to each of us wisdom and discernment. And Lord, for those of us who prayed with you, to you, we each pray to you in the manner in which we were taught. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, for everybody in the audience tonight, thank you for your patience as we finished off a meeting before this. And for everybody who's viewing at home, thank you for your patience as well. Appreciate it. All right, so first we have a public meeting. So a public hearing, I should say. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on the application of SQF LLC, 16 Middle Street, 4th floor, Portland, Maine, 04101, on their application to construct a line for such transmission upon, along, under, or across a public way, to place a new utility pole for an AT&T small wireless facility in the town of Georgetown, Mass. Public right-of-way at the corner of Central Street and West Main Street. The public hearing will be held at the meeting of the Board of Selectmen Monday, March 11th, 2018, 7 p.m. Town Hall, 1 Library Street, 3rd floor, meeting room, Georgetown, Mass. 01833.
2019.
2000.
It says 18. It said
Okay,
18.
2019. Okay. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So now we need a motion to open the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open the public hearing for
Public hearing for
SQF LLC for today, March 11, 2019.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone speaking in favor? Yeah. Okay. So anybody who would like to speak in favor, come on forward. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure thing. My name is Tuck O'Brien. I'm here representing Tilson Technologies subsidiary, SQF LLC. Tilson is a company that's headquartered in Portland, Maine. Our SQF group does installations of poles in the right-of-way on private property for the placement of cellular technology, small cells. We're currently doing this in all of the New England states and 25 other states nationwide. At the end of this process, SQF, the Portland company, will be the owner of the pole, and our client AT&T will be placing their technology on the pole. And so I think that just helps kind of frame what is actually going on. So we're independent from AT&T, but they're a very valued client of ours, and we're doing some of these pole sets for them across Massachusetts right now and across all of the New England states. Just quickly to kind of back up how we got here. I'm here to answer folks' questions that were raised at the last, kind of the first discussion of this, having to do with aesthetics, location, economics, and some health concerns. I want to kind of walk through some of the difference from reading the minutes about the difference between macro and what's going on here. This is different in nature and scale, and I'll show you some pictures, than a lot of the traditional cell towers most people think of, the big towers. The range here is measured in feet and not miles. The move to small cell is designed to address the technological and economic realities of the modern way that information moves. And our goal at SQF is to have all of our installations blend in and address the community's concerns and interests to provide the maximum benefits for local businesses, residents, and hopefully municipalities as well. One of the questions we get a lot is, why small cell here? Why not macro somewhere else? And I think there's three big reasons why we do this. One, address gaps in coverage, where it's not possible to put in a macro tower, and so there's often gaps, overlapping gaps in coverage. The second is to optimize the network for the amount of traffic it's getting. As we all know, cell phones and wireless technology are very prominent, from young kids to police, fire, and commuters and businesses. If you think about rush hour on 495, you often have bottlenecks that occur at certain times of the day where you might have 5 bars, but you can't get a signal, or you can't have a call go through. Small cells can supplement the existing network to allow for periods of extra capacity. And then finally, to improve these networks and look forward towards the future for the changing landscape of the way information moves, communities that are using see-click-fix, like I know your town is, traffic lights, parking monitoring, things of that nature on the municipal scale, online ordering of local businesses for food or other deliveries are increasingly relying on cellular technology as opposed to traditional broadband wired infrastructure. Schools, first responders, there's pretty broad need for this kind of increasingly localized and high capacity networks. We began discussions about this particular pole set in June. We submitted an application to the select board in October. Initially came before you on November 15th, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Cashel and Mr. Farrell on 11/15 with our partners from Centerline. Jeff is here, and he met with them as well. And so he is also here in case you have any technical questions on the installation. I can turn to him. So now I can move kind of the meat of what your questions were the last time and see if we get some more feedback from you. My goal tonight is not necessarily we're asking for your approval, but we're continuing to work through some of the issues, and we really want to make sure we get there and that you're comfortable with this. So I would ask you that if you're not comfortable with what I'm presenting tonight, and there are no final options, so you have some more time to think about it, that you simply hold this hearing open so that I can come back and continue to work with staff to resolve those issues as expeditiously as possible. I know that there's a working group that's been going on with some of the municipal light plants to kind of develop some standards, since a lot of this is new. We would like to get construction of this facility, if at all possible, this spring, but we have some time, and I'm more than happy to continue to talk and work with folks to come up with a solution that works for everybody. So first of all, just as a refresher, you can see behind you if you need, back there too. This is the existing preferred location. As you all know, it's right in front of the Davis Building in your downtown. The location specifically that we're looking at is by that little askew street light, pedestrian light, decorative light, that Town and Country over there on the right-hand side, right there, that Mr. Dawes is pointing to. That is the spot that was identified by the engineers at AT&T to have the best location to provide the best service for this downtown area. Moving on. We heard pretty loud and clear that you weren't, although that the predominant characteristic in this area of poles is the wooden pole, that you wanted to look at some different options. One of the things that we've done in many other municipalities in different contexts is look at what's called these stealth poles, where all the wiring and a lot of the instrumentation is on the inside of the pole. It also allows you to incorporate some of the lighting fixtures that are helpful in an area, both for aesthetic reasons and to also provide some safety lighting. So working from left to right, you'll see a taller one that's more of the Cobra head style, that is kind of a broader area. On the top is an entirely decorative fixture that basically was just in a plaza. But that can demonstrate to you what just a straight pole without a lot of fancy stuff on it would look like. And then the two below, which we just installed in Asbury Park, New Jersey, are kind of that combo at different heights of what that integrated feature could look like. That can also be done with a thinner cabinet at the bottom as well. There was some other municipal infrastructure that went inside that pole. And then far on the right is just your traditional wooden monopole, utility pole style with the antenna on top and the cabinet on the side. And what we generally do is we sheath the cables so they're not just willy-nilly all over the place, that they are contained to minimize any visual clutter. I also provided this to Michael, and he can email it to you as well, so you can take a closer look.
Can I ask you a question about the, sorry.
Yeah, well, Doug, go ahead. Why don't you go first?
See,
Left to right.
the pictures with those two on,
Yep.
The two middle ones, yeah.
this one right here and this one right here,
Yep.
are these heads changeable to something that would maybe be more in fitting with what we already have?
Yeah, the Town and Country, they are. Those were the examples that were consistent with the lighting that was in that municipality. We just did those a few weeks ago, so I had those handy, and they're pretty versatile. So yeah, the decorative lights you have out there, I don't know if it's a consistent approach with those Town and Countries you have out there, or they're just the two that are there. But you can use different lamp installations with these poles. I think, I'm not sure who owns those poles. I would assume that the municipal light plan owns those two pedestrian scale lights.
Doug, was that it?
Yeah, yeah, it's just, those two at the top kind of looks like a depth charge on top of it. I'm just commenting.
And that's the antenna.
The antenna itself.
But I think if you look at the other Cobra Head one to the left, all the way to the left, you'll see that antenna doesn't have that same shape. And the ones
It seems to be the same diameter as the pole almost.
almost, yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
I actually have two questions. During the first time that we met in November, it was indicated that there would be wires to this pole. Where were the wires on these poles? I don't.
They're inside.
Okay.
So they have to get wired and tied in to the infrastructure that runs underground currently. The pole that we were proposing initially, the electricity wires to power the pole would come from the distribution electricity line that's on the next pole up. The poles on the stealth poles are actually internal to the poles.
So you saying that if you put something like this up, which it seems like you're suggesting, that it could be possible, you would run the power underground then? Is that the plan?
Everything, there's nothing else underground, but the power for that light is already underground. All of the rest of the utilities are above ground, and so our initial approach was it's wooden pole, above ground power, so we proposed that. But in this location, that light is powered from below it already.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, great. And the other question is, how many providers are on these poles now? Is that just one?
At this time, one.
Just one.
Yeah.
So what does it look like if there were 5 or 6?
I don't have one with 5 or 6.
Well,
This
Does
is
he draw on it? What would it be? Would it be this, all the way down the pole?
no.
This way, would it be out?
No, it wouldn't be out. It would be on the pole. And the pole has to be a certain height in order to accommodate that. And so our approach, right now, we're putting this pole in for AT&T. We're trying as much as possible, as you can imagine from a business case, to try and co-locate or have the ability to co-locate. Generally, they're stacked with set distance on the poles.
So what do you mean? So if you say stack, then you're saying that if you have 5 providers, there'll be 5.
Well, there would never be able to be 5 providers. I think you'd be lucky to.
Tell me how many then.
I think
2?
generally 2.
3?
Yeah, 2 on these smaller poles. Yeah, on the taller poles, you sometimes have 60-foot monopole utility poles in some communities. Those taller poles, which would not be appropriate here, you could fit 3 or 4 on them. But on the shorter poles, you probably would get 2 at most.
So you're proposing the shorter pole?
Yeah, we were proposing no taller than a 40-foot
Okay.
pole. Yeah, which is
So
pretty
in the
consistent.
event, I think we all know that there's more than 2 providers, right? So when the other providers come in, is the plan to put a pole like this right next to it?
No,
and
that-
add the other providers?
No, that's certainly not the plan. I think we are here, and I'd be happy to provide more information, but we are coming here with one provider who brought us on to put a pole here for them.
I understand that. Yeah.
I think Tilson as a company would like to, since we're going to own the poles, like to keep open the option of co-locating, and they would have to work within the infrastructure of what that pole is. So,
If all providers, then if they came to your company to say, I'd like to add onto that pole, you would say no?
no, we would like to, if it's at all possible from an engineering standpoint, we would like to say yes. I mean, this is your downtown, so from both our company perspective and from your perspective, we'd like to co-locate as many of these as possible.
Gotcha.
I think what you see in a lot of communities, and this is with the municipal light approach, generally other states, you don't have as much localized distribution utilities. So you have the same utility owning a lot of the poles. Chances are then the small cell antennas will go onto the poles or onto the streetlights. In Massachusetts, where there's so many municipal light plants, that's why we're seeing a need to put in more individualized poles like we're doing here. I think best case scenario, you would get a pole in this type of location that would possibly fit 2 providers. But right now, we're only planning 1 for this pole.
And then I think as a follow-up to the need, if I could, Mr. Chair, I don't want to jump ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we had asked you a question prior to, and we didn't receive an answer. We got some correspondence that said that we did, so I think that there just might be some communication lapse there, but so who is this going to benefit? Our first thought was it's going to benefit the commuters that are coming through our town. And I think the question was, is it actually going to benefit the residents? And it was communicated to us that AT&T, I don't know if they have reports, but they know who their providers or who their customers are that are having this spotty service. And our question was, well, who are those customers? Are they people in Georgetown, or are they people on the road that are commuting?
Yeah, sure. So this area was identified for, as I went through before, there's coverage gaps where there's just no coverage. You have 0 bars. And where I live in Portland, Maine, that's the case. It's in the middle of Portland, and there's just a gap there. There's other places where during times when there's a lot of users, a lot of downtown locations, this is the case, where you have plenty of service until there are a bunch of people trying to get access at once, and then you don't have service. So that's the second reason. And the third is just to expand the capabilities of the network. So who's going to benefit? I would say all of those cases. As the network gets stronger, more residents who are using See-Click-Fix, who are ordering from the local businesses on their phones to get takeout food from the pizza place or whoever, they'll benefit. Those local businesses, when we started doing my previous job, I was the planning director in Portland, and when we were starting to roll these out, had all the same questions you guys have right now, and we have a lot of historic districts. It's also old, like Georgetown is. We had a lot of demand from our businesses who were having trouble with their broadband providers and who wanted to have more flexibility with going with wireless services. So that's another group that would be a use case for this. And then lastly, municipalities are starting to use the wireless technology more and more. I mentioned See-Click-Fix. We have the smart traffic lights. I think your traffic lights in this area might be owned by the Department of Transportation, but parking meters. So who's going to benefit is a question.
Well, not who's going to benefit. So that wasn't my question. My question was, you saw the need that here's the location, we have gaps.
Yep.
Right? That's why you're putting it there, because you know that there's a need. And our question to you was, where is the need? Not from a broad sense of, it'll be great for downtown, it'll be great for areas that don't have coverage. The question was, where is the spots in the downtown where there's no bars? Who are the customers that are receiving spotty coverage that made you decide that that particular area is the spot that you need to put it in? And that was a question that we
Yeah.
posed to you guys.
And I'm trying to answer that. It's not going to get as granular as you want. As there's 14 AT&T customers on the street next to that have complained. This
That's
is
what we were looking for.
yeah. I'm not going to have that information for you. I'm sorry. The way that they look to expand the network takes a lot more factors in. Complaints, customer service are a big part of it, but these networks are also growing and trying to stay robust for new generations of phone, for new technology that uses it. So it's a lot more complicated than simply, there's 20 complaints a week about this.
So would I be correct in saying that, based on the location of all the other cell towers, what your coverage area map looks like, you think that this is going to fill in some of those? You don't know if it's going to be great for the businesses in town. It could be perfectly fine as it is right now, right?
Today, I
There may
think.
be no issues because you can't get that granular, right? You don't know if people in the downtown are having issues.
Oh, I'm sure that the AT&T engineers have some information when they put this into their algorithm. I'm just saying, from what I've been
We were
told.
asking for you guys to get
Yeah.
us, and you said you would.
Did
And you
we?
never saw it, yep.
Okay, well, I think my approach was to answer it that way. I don't know how much of a level of detail we're going to be able to get in terms of that, but I would say that the engineers look at both the ability of people dropping calls today, so numbers of dropped calls, and the expansion of how robust the network is to handle the increase in traffic. I mean, for example, to kind of make it into the municipal realm, over 65% of 3 years ago, 65% of all 911 calls came in over wireless phones. Most of those were coming from inside. That's increased by about 5 to 7% annually. And so, as I was trying to say, it's not just about who dropped calls going through there and were annoyed about it. It's about, as people transition to this kind of technology, the use is going to increase, and how much could this dense location downtown bear? So I will continue to try to provide more information, but I don't know if the answer is going to be as specific at any point as you would.
Oh, it sounds like it isn't going to treat a problem that we have today. You're expecting it to occur, or you're expecting that it's going to solve potential problems.
No, I'm saying that when they look at placement, it's all three of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Kip?
Just a question on the different poles. So these all have a very different aesthetics footprint, if you will. So as Doug mentioned, these look like depth charges, for instance. These are decorative. I get that. But the one to the left, obviously, the footprint at the top, that's obviously the antenna. It doesn't look anything like this other technology. It's so much more narrow. Is that just because the pole is taller, so there's more components within the pole? Or can you actually make one of these more decorative lights less large at the top, for instance, if you know what I mean?
You have an answer for that?
Evening.
Hi.
Like,
Give you my card. My name is Edward Parry. I'm outside counsel to AT&T. So I think, the question on aesthetics, there are trade-offs that occur. So the one on the left, the pole is definitely going to have a bigger diameter, so the antenna looks like it fits in a little bit better. So the components of the facility are the antenna at the top, or as Mr. Dawes said, the depth charge at the top of a skinny pole. If you make the pole wider in diameter, then that sort of disappears. And if you take a look all the way to the right, that's an existing, that's what our installations typically look like. We're attaching an antenna. It's a 10-inch diameter. The closer you get to 10 inches on the pole, the more it's going to blend in. The other components are the electrical components, which you see on one to the far left is that box. So that contains the radio units, which does all the transfers. We also have electricity that comes in. My guess is on the one at the left, the width at the base deals with some of the electrical issues. So it's those three components: electrical meter, the antenna, which needs to be up at the top, and then the electronic equipment. Some of the installations, the electronic equipment is put at the base, so you get a broader base. It's not really depicted in any of these, but I have seen them, and we've done work in Boston where the base is wider, say a 2 or 3 foot base square, and then the pole comes up, the antenna at the top. One issue there, you have snow clearing issues that needs to be vented. We found municipalities are pushing snow up against them, so it's not functional after a while. So maintenance creates issues, but it's really just a function of AT&T uses a 10-inch diameter antenna. If we can get the pole to be 10 inches in diameter, it's going to blend in. Those Bishop crooks, I think they're called, where the light sort of comes over and bends. You have a pretty slim pole up at the top, and structurally it's going to have to support the antenna. But the antenna, assuming that's 10-inch antenna, it's definitely going to look bulkier. But these can be designed in any sort of fashion that the town is interested in doing. I will say, to go back to your coverage issue, I think Mr. Sadler, we can get you maps on what our coverage looks like. We're not going to have granular as to what customers drop calls or what customer complaints. That's obviously proprietary to AT&T's network. Anybody near that facility is going to get enhanced coverage if they have AT&T. So if there's somebody in the stores there, if there's somebody on the street, if there's somebody that lives nearby or is traveling through, they will get high-speed data coverage. And those are the maps you'll see. You'll see that AT&T's RF engineers will say, we're having deficiencies in the network either at various times or it's not up to the network design that we have. That's what where he was talking about capacity. So the RF engineer says, we have a need in this area, go find us something. In this instance, my understanding is, after contact with the municipal electrical plant, they're not interested in allowing us to attach. They're not the only ones. I mean, we do have others in the Commonwealth. So we're looking for alternatives. I thought, and looking today through the materials, replacing that light, depending on who owns it, might make some sense from an aesthetics point of view, because you do lose some of the sheathing and the conduit to run up the outside of a wooden utility pole. If you look to the one on the right, as I said, we have the meter underneath, the lowest, closest to the ground, then you have that equipment cabinet, and then the antennas, but you'll have sheathing and conduit running up the side of the pole. You can see it there.
And so, thanks, Ed. That was really helpful. So the other thing I wanted to get going was just a conversation about what we had heard some issues with it fitting in with the aesthetics of the downtown. When I talked to John about it, it was basically not wanting to introduce more clutter. You really want to try and head towards either undergrounding or trying to make it a more coherent area. There's a lot of stuff there. So I wanted to start a conversation about what the aesthetic things you didn't like, what you would like to see, so that we can kind of get our heads together of what would fit into the fabric.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
My understanding is that maximum range between towers or poles is up to 2,000 feet before you need another antenna. Is that true, or is it less than that?
That's high. It's generally less than that. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say you're probably looking at about 1,200, 1,250 feet, but there are a lot of things that impact coverage. I can tell you the foliage on trees, leaves, pine needles are killers to the technology because it eats up the signal and blocks it. So if we have buildings that obstruct the signal, the signal comes out in a 360-degree pattern, just like a tower would from a macro site, which is why you see those 3 sides of an array. So we're producing a coverage, and we don't do good with steel. We do horribly with steel. We don't do good with windows. Bricks, cement are a problem. We do penetrate wood to an extent. We do get through automobiles, but everything that blocks everything that's in the way will dissipate. So it's not easy to say, even with a cell tower.
Well, I mean, this is just general statistics.
I'd say
Each environment is different. Some could be a little bit longer, some could be a little bit shorter. I understand that. It's just getting
The general rule of thumb for AT&T
range.
is between
So
12
we're
and
looking at a
1,500.
pole every 1,200 feet,
You could if there's a need for the network. Correct.
and then you have other vendors that come into the community.
Depending on whether they have
Yeah.
need.
No, right. So, what about, do you have any radio frequency pollution specs, health issues? A lot of people were upset when the tower went into the church steeple.
Yeah,
They
sure.
were concerned about RF pollution and health issues.
So Ed has a report that we'll leave with you, but just to kind of generally frame the difference between the macro and the small cell. I mean, we're starting to talk on the scale. They have high bandwidth, the ability to move information, the low power density, which is why you need more of them. The power density is the measurement that they use in the scientific communities to measure these. The FCC and the EPA generally has in the high 400s of where they like the limits that they like to enforce. Rarely is an issue for even a macro site at a really high-powered, high-density transmission line for an electrical company. You might start to get close to there if you're standing right next to it. The power density of a police mobile radio at 4 feet is about 100. Small cell is similar to things like a baby monitor at 3 feet, a microwave at 4 feet. It's between 1 and 2. So a cordless phone from your house, when it's on the cradle and you're standing 3 or 4 feet away, that is about the kind of power density numbers that we're talking about for these small cells from the pole to the ground, just to kind of frame it for you. It's a lot different than what went in the church, which was a more traditional site. Goes farther, a lot more powerful. That answer your question?
If I might continue, then 5G, first, isn't even ready to be deployed. But second, 5G is primarily a broadband expander. So it's not running electricity. It's not running telephone as we know telephone. But it's primarily for broadband. Is that right?
Well, it'll do all those things. I think the difference
Well, it's
between...
primarily to move data.
It is, right, but I was just saying, like, the traditional voice telephone, that those distinctions are starting to get really blurry. I mean, most people are watching videos on their phones more than they're talking.
I understand, but we have, that's the need for the increase
Is data.
in broadband is data,
Yep,
not telephone service.
correct, yep.
Okay. Do you know when 5G is ready to deploy?
There's a lot of arguments about that right now, whether it's actually deployed, but it's a speed issue.
Well, some say they are, but
Well, so you're asking me,
we have no devices for it.
Right. So, it's in development. As I said, some carriers say they're getting close to those ranges, but, 5G is a speed issue. So, once they start attaining the speeds and they have the phones to accommodate the speeds, then you'll have, pure 5G. Right now, you'll see lots of, caveats to the 5G. They have different semantics, I guess, and there are, some disputes going on if you Google and look in the media. So, right now we're at a 4G standard. AT&T is on the cusp of 5G, and I think they feel that some of their higher 4G speeds are approaching 5G, and you'll see them refer to that.
Well, does AT&T have a plan of deployment? Where are they going to start first, go to? Because they usually build off of these things.
Well, I think what you typically find is they go where the people go first. So, we've been working in Boston and the suburbs of Boston, for a couple of years now. And AT&T has been, deployed in Boston through third-party vendors for some time with these small cell installations. I've been at Waltham, Lawrence. I've been in most municipalities in Massachusetts. I don't know where the next round of deployments are coming, but I would assume that they'll start bumping out from 128 to the other
Not to be
municipalities.
argumentative, but 5G is not deployed. What you're using it for is 3G and 4G. You're not using it for 5G. And that's what I was trying to get to, I think, because the latest I read was maybe the earliest of 2021.
Well, but as I said, AT&T is reaching speeds with its 4G where they're calling it something 5G. So their feeling is that they are hitting speeds of 5G, and I think they call it LTE 5G or something like that from a marketing
Well,
perspective.
you know, branding is all.
Yeah, I think.
Well, but that's not, I mean, that's not an argument for us
Right,
here.
right, no,
right,
it's not.
Yeah, and I think, in other places that we're working in Miami, you're starting to see some of the technology being put into some of the new sites. People are saying maybe the phones will be out by the end of this year, maybe the end of next year. 5G is a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
And there are coverage issues here because, and I'll just, a quick anecdote, I did a site in Groveland recently, and a member of the planning board said, can you guys get into Georgetown, right in this downtown area, because I have a horrible time with calls. I said, well, I'm sure I'll get there at some point, I'll bring it up with them, so I leave that with you from the Groveland Planning Board, sorry. So let me explain a little bit what I handed out there. This is a report. We call it a generic emissions report. It was conducted by Dr. Donald Hayes. He was commissioned by AT&T to do the report. He's independent of AT&T, works for lots of municipalities, lots of universities, and government agencies. So as I said, these are low power, and as you'd expect, the majority of the signal is going to be near the antenna. So if you take a look at page 2, you'll see where the red is coming out for the antenna, that's the highest level of power, and that's less than 10% of the FCC maximum. So with respect to emissions, the key is that all the carriers need to comply. These are low-powered. You should be comfortable with what Dr. Hayes has reported here. And the FCC has exclusive jurisdiction over this. So, as you see, if you're standing on the street, you're getting less than 0.5% of the maximum allowable. So these are very low power. And what he did was he just color-coded these so it's obvious to a layperson, what kind of emissions you're looking at. And with each of our installations comes a shut-off switch. So if there are ever issues with the installation up through the meter box, there is a electrical shut-off switch. As I said, we put those on our utility pole attachments also so that they can be shut down in the event of an emergency.
So did you also say, because this one on the far right, that looks like a wooden pole,
That is.
and that antenna on the top looks a lot smaller than, oops, the other ones that were shown. Is it, or is it just an optical illusion?
No. It's relative to the perspective and the specific installation. Like I'd be hard pressed guessing. That's
You see that can on the top? Would that be equivalent to the can over there? That's
the
right
can
to
on the
left?
top
Yeah,
or the one on the side. Well, that would probably fit in that can. Yes.
this up here.
Yeah.
Is that the same size as that there?
I can't. I
That
can't.
we know? No? Okay. Maybe it's just the perspective.
Yeah, I can tell you the one on the right there is not an AT&T antenna because that is divided into two sections. Our antenna is 10 foot. Our antenna is 10 inches in diameter and 24 inches tall, so it's 2 feet by 10 inches. If the utility pole is 8 inches in diameter, then our antenna is going to come very close to meeting it. It'll exceed it by a little bit.
So do you do wooden?
Yes.
I think he's showing that on the second page of this handout. I
haven't
think
got
you
that
might
far.
see
Been
that it's
busy
round and it looks kind of like that, only it's on a pole.
And our original proposal that we brought to the last time when we were here was a wooden pole. Yeah, and what we heard back was the aesthetic concern, so we went out and looked at some alternatives, trying to just get some feedback, because as Ed was saying, there's a lot of flexibility with what can be done, and to get some sense of, if we were to try and move forward, and I'll go into an alternative location that we can work with as well, but what you would like to see in this particular pole.
I had one other question that said, so what I was alluding to before with the distance, how many poles are you actually talking about here in Georgetown?
We're just talking one.
Just one,
Yeah.
and then you'll never be back for another one?
I would never say never.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard never much too often. We will be back.
Yeah.
Or someone in our industry will be back.
And I think, more people are going to get phones and the technology is going to change. After 5G, there'll be some other thing. Right now in this downtown location, this is the only pole.
I'm trying to get a perspective of the
Proliferation
roadway
of how.
with all these additional poles that these cans on the top of it,
Well, I would say, I mean, Georgetown's a town of, what, 9,000 people?
roughly.
Roughly. So the amount of density that you're going to need, I was just working in Austin, Texas, and they have, you know, installations on the street lights with really strict design guidelines, but they have them every block or every 3 blocks because of different carriers. But that's millions of people coming downtown every day. So the amount of density you're going to need to keep the coverage gap is going to be different. But it's hard to say, you know, what, you know, 10 years, 5 years from now, what's going to happen. I think the antennas will probably get smaller, and, you know, how they'll change it. You know, considering the size of the small
We're
cells
talking
now.
about additional poles.
Yeah, and the additional poles is going to depend on a number of factors as well. You know, I think the state's working on some different rules. I think you start to see the transportation authorities looking at incorporating some of these more into their street lights, into their traffic lights. And then obviously the different municipal light plants are going to have different approaches based on like co-locating on their poles too.
Oh, we do. I mean, we do these with MassDOT. You know, it would be great if we could use the poles, but we understand that at least right now is an option that the utility doesn't want to afford. You know, I think there are changes afoot. We understand it's new. It's not. You know, many of these, as I go in, it's the first time they're seeing them, so there are lots of, you know, invaluable questions, and so part of it is a learning process. I don't think AT&T is going to spend the money to put one of these poles outside of a residence that's going to cover one person. On the other hand, if there are traffic issues, I have done these sites near high schools where there's a particular traffic issue at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon where the network fails, which is a real public safety issue, but the network fails in that area because too many people are trying to climb on it. So the idea is that the network exists. When users tap into it, it shrinks. And when you get too many users, it doesn't function properly. So people can't make calls, or they can't text, or they can't do whatever they're doing with videos and, you know, information sources. That is a frustration. So I don't think it's going to be like a Wi-Fi where we're putting it in every house. But on the other hand, if you have areas that are congested with people and traffic, then you're likely to find that that's where the carriers will go first, because frankly, that's where the people are. You know, in Gillette, we have hundreds of antennas because we have 80,000 people there all at once, all wanting to, you know, send pictures to each other. In Georgetown, I think it's a little more sparse than that kind of concentration.
Well, if I might, Mr. Chair, one more. I have read and heard that there's a lot of lobbying going on in Washington,
Always is.
and the potential for delaying deployment of 5G, especially with the municipalities lobbying their representatives and senators and all this.
Yeah.
Because no one really understands it, and people have the sense that that the FCC is forcing this on communities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's a lot of what I would call pushback.
Yep, sure.
And I can just see the possibility of the rules being changed.
There's always that
Well,
possibility.
there always will be. I'm just saying.
You know, right now, we're dealing with the reality that the FCC issued an order. I know that you're well represented by Mr. Eichmann. And municipalities, I read the same articles everyone else does. Municipalities have pushed back, but right now, the FCC order stands. There's no, legal stay to block the FCC from implementing the order, so we're following the rules that they've been laid out.
Yeah, and I think a couple, there were municipalities like San Francisco and larger places that were way ahead of it, and they had theirs, and then there were other places where, there was a lot of inefficiency in how they were going to act, which made rolling out, especially in rural areas, really challenging because, this is not something where you can cover like 17 towns with one of these, so you need some sort of consistency. But we didn't come, just to reframe this, we're not here talking about shot clocks or timelines or anything like that. We're just trying to get information so that we can come up with a workable solution.
No, I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
better.
No, I hear you. I just feel like before we were,
How it would be deployed around our community.
yeah.
And I'll go over and whack Wally over in Groveland when I get the chance.
I don't know which member it was, but I can look it up.
Gary, you have any questions
Well, was
come?
he done with the presentation? I mean, we kind of went
No.
into
Well-
questions, and
I know.
I wanted to more hear the presentation.
Yep, all right, and that's fair.
Yeah, well, it's not too much left. So the other question that we got a lot of was, is there anywhere else you can put this? So I went back to the engineers, and they identified another location that's kind of across the intersection. You can see that on Google Earth. So candidate A is the one we've been talking about, and candidate B, and there's some close-ups. I think that cone is the location. That is the alternative that they came up with. This is obviously, this intersection, this downtown location is obviously, from an engineering point, I think we started with 14 alternative sites, and they got down to these two. We're working on a couple others that are on private property, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. But these were the two that, wanted to give you some options. I wish it was 15 or 16, but these are the two that came back. So, again, not asking for necessarily for feedback, but if you have it, that's, I think it was instructive to me as I was kind of trying to balance this out and get back to Mike and John with some answers to your questions, how clued in on this area the engineers were for coverage issues.
That it?
That's it. So that was quick.
Go ahead, Gary. Giddy up.
I think I was one of the ones that asked about alternate locations, so I thank you for bringing that. I've got a copy of a letter. It's not dated for me, but, when it says that you're willing to work on locations. I think you brought a lot back tonight, and I thank you for that. I mean, we've also got a responsibility, the way I see this, to move forward in town. And I mean, even I have one of these things as of last month. I mean, when we talk about how much power in that, I mean, it's out there. I mean, we're receiving it. It's going through us all right now. I mean, one of my ideas, I'll throw out my ideas, but you don't have it on there, was, boy, one of those ones that you had, I thought would look great down by where we've got the park and ride block down the road. Perhaps you could put that up and say, we'll throw in a shelter taking up about the size of a parking spot so people can wait for the bus that comes there. But I happen to also note that I think the bus actually drops you right off there where candidate A is. And I don't know if there's enough room there. The town has a rather large square, but I don't know where the lines lie of what is public property and what isn't. But even in one of those areas, if it was large enough to perhaps throw in a rather nice looking, now this is just Gary talking, but a rather nice looking shelter where people could get out of the weather if they're waiting for the bus ride, getting dropped off, getting picked up. I mean, those are my thoughts. I mean, I want to work with this company. I know the FCC hasn't left us a lot. We can't say, hey, if you put it on a private building, you're going to probably be paying X amount of dollars. You put it here and we get $250 a year or something like that. It was a very low figure that the FCC gave us. But I understand some of the reason for that, because these things are not easy to move through, and it holds up. So I guess I want to stay open. I like the way you opened up, asking that we don't close the hearing tonight, that we at least extend it so that we can perhaps work. And I mean, I know we've got our municipal light department director here tonight, and I certainly want his input. John Cashel is here, perhaps for another reason, but he might be able to help on whether something could work there, as I'm saying, and what benefit can also come to the town that perhaps may not be in the FCC rules, but in working together, you could perhaps say, well, yeah, we'll put one of these in. We'll limit it to just one candidate at this time. I mean, and if someone else wants it, then it'll be up to them to come and find another option. I mean, we've like I say, we've all got these things and we want them to work. So I think you've brought back some much better options than what we had in the beginning back in, I think it was November or October, I can't remember. But so that's where I am. I've got no real answers. I've just thrown out some thoughts, maybe wild, but they're out there. And I do, from what I've read in your packet, yeah, these aren't meant to replace the big towers. These are just, all that these are meant to do at this point is to help. The big towers, it says are still needed, they're the ones that go miles. Not to say that 2 years down the road, we might be looking at 3 or 4 more of these things for other, what's the term, you know, people that are providing service providers. So, we can be stubborn, or we can work with them. I prefer the work.
Kip?
Just a quick question to clarify. Can you go back to the poll screen for a second? So if so, you got the one to the far right. You said that that's not an AT&T installation, correct?
It's not.
So the other one's all is that a Tilson design, or is it an AT&T design for the drum, if you will?
So that's a good question. There's companies that actually design these off the shelf, and that's where some of these are from. These are some of the ones that have been approved for AT&T use elsewhere in the country that we've been using. I think some of these are in New Jersey, some of them are in North Carolina. The one on the right is just, I wanted to get a picture of a standard pole. I think it's actually a Verizon installation, but just to give you a sense of what a wood one in place actually looks like.
Sure. So if you had a pole in wherever, it doesn't matter. So you had your AT&T pole and the black box at the top. If you decided to put a Verizon antenna on it, would it be that installation on that same pole, or would it be the same black?
I don't think.
You know what I mean, would you have two different styles?
And I don't want to get too down this road. I can bring back more information. There's multiple ways it happens, either up or down, or sometimes you can co-locate the antennas. But those are designed not to have the smaller, shorter ones are designed just for that one antenna.
Gotcha.
Unless they go in the same antenna piece. The ones that are the utility poles ones have more. Generally, it goes up, but we have seen them located on the same pole further down too. It really depends on what that particular carrier's frequency map says the height needs to be in order to get the coverage.
Right. So potentially we could see one of these poles, regardless of the height, if it's much taller. You could see the black drum, you could see the white thing, all on the same pole, different styles, because it's the different carrier.
That's a good question. I think that's a really good question and a good point you're making. I think the likelihood would be that in order to get this to be done, we would have to standardize the design somewhat. I mean, what we're hearing from everyone across the country is reduce visual clutter, make them, so if you want to get them approved, you're not going to try and make them as ugly as possible. But again, I'm here representing AT&T, which is looking for one installation for themselves.
So let me
Is
explain.
Tilton here?
I'm sorry.
What?
Is Tilton?
Yeah, that's me.
That's him.
He works for
Okay,
AT&T.
but you're
yeah.
representing.
Yeah, so Tilson's actually bringing it forward. AT&T is going to put the broadcast equipment on it.
So what I handed out, I get asked a lot of questions about an actual AT&T installation. I handed out a picture, they're the same picture, of an installation on Union Street in Framingham. So it's an actual existing AT&T small cell that was installed. You'll see the antenna at the top with the mounting bracket, then you can see the equipment cabinet, about 11 feet off the ground or so. It's about 30 inches high. So that's an actual installation. So if you want to compare the wooden pole installation that you're seeing on the right with what AT&T proposes, you're looking at that in Framingham, Massachusetts right now. Those two photos I gave you.
If I mean, that blends right in with the rest of the neighborhood. But what I think and you probably know, you've also done your homework. I mean, we're right in the middle of a study right now for a downtown to try to improve it. We want to try to improve traffic. We want to try to improve aesthetics. We want to try to make it more pedestrian friendly. So even though this could be what our downtown looks like, we do hope that someplace in the future that it's going to be improved. And I think we need to.
Yeah, and I just gave that for an example
Take
so
that
that we
into
could clarify
consideration.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Well, Gary echoes what I was just about to say, is that, a lot of the concern that I have is specific to some, maybe far-ranging plans or at least thoughts of improving downtown. And, believe me, those plans do not have anything in them containing more, poles, right? That's not, kind of beautifying anything, right? So, and I also think that if one ends up downtown and we call someone and say, well, we want it out of there, the answer is going to be no. So from that standpoint, it makes it really hard on us to say, yeah, come on in, so you guys could have 1,250 feet of coverage, yet, we have to now plan around a pole downtown that we don't want there anymore, and neither does anybody else who might be coming into downtown. To Selectman Sadler's point, it's like, okay, who is this benefiting? If you guys had some feedback saying, well, you know what, 50% of Georgetown uses AT&T, and it's going to benefit all of those people that live in town, all right, that's one thing. But if you're telling me you're going to improve 1,250 feet for people who are traveling, through Georgetown to go to Groveland, I don't care, not even a little.
Sure.
Okay, so from that standpoint, I'm still not sold on this at all. Zero. Sorry.
So what about the AT&T customers around?
If you have that
Georgetown
data,
residents, I mean.
if you have that data, if you're going to give me it's 10%, well, 10% is not a lot of people to consider, for, ruining, downtown, and the 90% who don't use AT&T.
You don't have that data anyways, you said. You can't give that out.
So,
But that would be Georgetown as a whole. We don't know who's moving through this area or who is sitting in that area.
Well, we get a lot of people that travel through, at 5 o'clock that are going to Groveland, like you said, or going to Haverhill and whatever else. My downtown is not going to be affected because I want to improve the data reach of someone who's traveling to Haverhill. I could care less.
But the thing is, we don't know where they're traveling. The idea is that at this particular location.
Again, tell me what you have for Georgetown.
Well, if I told you 100% of Georgetown was covered
Perfect.
by
Beautiful.
But
that it at least benefits citizens of Georgetown.
But I couldn't tell you that 100% of the people in Georgetown will benefit from this site whatsoever. Because maybe some of our competitors are in this area.
You shouldn't be on the phone with your car anyways, right?
Well, but this is the part, but it's not just so when you said they're going to Groveland,
No, but
I'm
that's
telling
all
you they're
cars.
coming from Groveland to Georgetown. That's the coverage problem.
Well,
The
I can
people
tell
in-
you that the downtown right now, if you guys have been down there's a lot of vacant storefronts down there. So if your perception that it's a vibrant downtown and there's hundreds or thousands of people that are down there every day, I would have to say no. I think a majority of the traffic is just your commuters.
but that's the goal, is to have it be a vibrant downtown, isn't it? Right.
So you're gonna.
No, I'm just saying, like, just because.
Vibrant downtown because you can use your cell phone.
Well, yeah, no, I
don't know.
do think
I
it's
don't-
important. I think,
I
and
don't buy
we
that.
can easily give you data on that. I mean, as the former planning director of Portland, one of the big issues of business and home buyers and folks who are coming to our downtown was the ability to use their phones to order food, to order flowers, to figure out where they're going next, to look at the agenda of the town hall meeting that's right in their downtown. So I think making the dichotomy of everyone who uses a cell phone is in a car just trying to get through your town, this is your downtown. So to have good technology coverage, you guys use See-Click-Fix. How do you think everyone's entering the See-Click-Fix stuff? They use their phones.
Mr. O'Brien, we can walk our downtown in 3 minutes. I don't think they're using phones. I don't. So for people walking downtown and whatever, if they need to order food, they can walk there.
Okay.
So again, point taken, but it doesn't apply.
Yeah, I don't need to belabor it.
Doesn't apply. So with that being, I just don't see a huge benefit for this town. I just don't. So with that being said, Selectman Fowler, brought up, the park and ride, area, where it's a little further, not much, it's what, 50 feet? From where this, not even.
Block or two, yeah, by a block. Yeah.
Why couldn't we focus on that? Because it's a park and ride. It's not as visible, within that stretch. It's not far away. It's just a little further up, So I think something like that would be a little bit more amicable for me, okay, because it is not encumbering, maybe some future plans, that we might have. the aesthetics of our downtown, but yet, okay, is still delivering on what you guys are really striving for, and that's connectivity, for different people. Which again, I appreciate. I haven't seen numbers about how this really is a positive for Georgetown residents yet, but I will still go along with you in terms of what you're trying to accomplish here. But the median here has to be achieved, and that is, for me, it can't encumber our downtown, because that also might encumber our ability to go out at some point in time and attract different businesses. What if we had a business who really likes the plans that we have downtown, but says, man, what is this monstrosity here, right? Can we get rid of it? Okay, and your answer is going to be no, right? And then we're here to stay. Now the town suffers because this, pulls in front, and we have a business that walks.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand a couple things. One, the aesthetics, again, is making sure that whatever goes there fits in. Two, when you develop the downtown, you want to have flexibility that if the downtown plans involve like a pocket park there or something like that, that you have the ability to move the pole in the future. Is that correct?
It is.
Because I'm trying to figure out, because I would say that across the country, and as a planner, the downtowns are looking for good wireless coverage. So on the one hand, like if the pole is ugly as sin, yeah, that could have a negative impact.
Yeah.
But if the pole is providing good coverage and provides other amenities like lighting and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Maybe that's a plus. So I'm just trying to make so if we can work on,
But go to the picture for our downtown, please.
yeah, this next one.
Right there.
Yeah, correct. So if you have the poles right here,
Yeah.
our parking lot is like literally right over here.
What's,
You
that
had
street is
a map that showed earlier. I
That's East
thought.
Main
It's not even a-
still on East, at East Main?
Oh yeah, well it's literally right here.
No.
Same road, same downtown. It's just a little further up.
Trust me, I had 12
Out of the
different
way.
locations that we started with. So I think we'll go back and try to rehash it. What about the candidate B? Same issues?
I would say same issue. As a matter of fact, that'll be, I think, more open. Oh, yeah, because it's
There's
so
nothing
open.
there.
That'll be more, covered. And maybe our town planner will have a statement, on that as well. But if you look at this site over here, and it's maybe tucked away a little bit, it's still close to downtown. It still gives you 1,250 feet or 1,500 square feet. And I think, it would be a nice median, between the two. So
We can look.
okay.
So, yeah, I see it. It's right here. Yeah. We'll go back to him.
And the town has the right of way in front of that, is that? Is that a state- is that a
We
state
own-
parking
We
lot?
own the parking lot.
You own the parking right?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. So it could even potentially be set back.
And that's what I'm trying to say here. It's like,
Yeah, I think one of the
aesthetically,
things
it
I
might be
noticed from
okay.
the list that they identified was it seems like the other sites that were on private property were going, I don't even know which direction we're going away from the parking ride, but we'll look and see if it makes a big difference.
Okay.
There were a couple over there. There were a couple closer to Town Hall as well.
So the only thing that you're looking is to keep the antenna on top from obstruction.
Correct.
And all this for 1,250 to 1,500 feet, which is
why our job's
which is
not that
also
easy.
I'm struggling, for this. I mean, they're paying you how much per hour to struggle for 1,500 square feet? Or 1,500 feet?
I work for the startup, so I don't get paid hourly.
I get a
Well,
reason.
whatever. I mean, it just seems weird to me.
It's the start of it,
This is
Mr. Chair, and that's the thing that I would caution the board, I don't know the answer, but you allow one pole in your downtown, and that may trigger, candidate A is street number 2 after the parking ride,
Yep.
so.
Yep. I have.
So can I just before, because we keep going back to this, the 1,250 or the 1,500 is an average, and it's a radius. So it's not, 12, so it's 2,500, it's 1,250 in each direction, and that's on average. So it could be 2,000 in one direction and 1,000 in a different direction. So it's not like the footprint's insignificant. It's, roughly a quarter mile, could be a half a mile because it's a radius. And the network suffers. And the technology is coming. There's no doubt about that.
Yep. Hold on, Mike.
Oh, my.
This might be a good segue for Dave.
Right, I was gonna
Dave
get to them then.
and his group is working on technical and aesthetic regulations that would, look at the big picture, not just this one pole.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mike. Doug, you have one more point?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to state that I'm all in favor of having advanced technology. What I don't want to see is a proliferation of, now we have a pole farm all over town.
Sure.
With all the different vendors wanting poles or adding on. That's the only thing.
That's why you control the decision.
But I'm all for increased technology. I mean, I want neural implants, so it does it when I tell it,
Put those baseball scores right away.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for the time. Anyone to speak against? David, why don't you come on up? John, you want to come up as well?
Do we want them to stay while Dave speaks? or-
we'll be here.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm thinking they'll just be there. I just want to give them the chairs here in front of us so that they have the ability. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Good. How you doing?
Thanks for joining. We appreciate it.
Dave Schofield, Light Plant Manager.
John Cashel, Town Planner.
All right, actually, so Mike actually segued to Dave, and then we'll get to you, John. Is that okay?
Sure.
You're not going to hold it against me?
Nope.
All right. David, why don't you take it from there, kind of let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I can mention. I just got a draft today from CTC, who we're working with for technical standards and aesthetic safety, the whole palette. Application process with regard to the installation of small cell equipment. So I emailed it to Mike and John. I haven't had a chance to read through it. It's extensive, and I know you guys probably have to take some time with it too. So my hope is that the three of us read it, and then we make our changes, we discuss. It's heavily loaded with light plant centric stuff right now, meaning that it talks about my structures a lot. I think that we can use similar language that's irrelevant to you guys. We're going to need two sets, I think, that would apply to your space and your buildings and all that stuff. It's true that in the beginning, I didn't have any of this. This was very new. Tilson engaged me a long time ago. It might even have been close to a year ago. This was newer then than it even is now. And they wanted a quick answer, and a quick answer is no a lot of the time, especially when you don't know what you're dealing with. But I'm happy to revisit our spots on our system when I get some standards in place and look at it. Then I agree with all the points made up here. Everybody made some great points. But I think the big thing that I'm concerned about is having a foreign entity in your right-of-way. Where we're supposed to be, the water department, we don't, somebody made the point. They're just showing you their locations. What is this, AT&T, Verizon could come up next week and say, we want the location B. Sprint could come up and say, we want to be over here. And I think the precedent would be made. We'd have a problem there. If we throw it back to me, I can have an element of control. I like some of the products I saw up there. I think they're trying, and we could probably work with some of those. But in any event, I didn't have too much to say. I just wanted to let you know that we're working on this. We have some draft documents that we're going to be reviewing, and we're getting there. We just need a little bit of time.
Okay. And I understand that you do have an estimate of time, based on what you guys need to do of end of April?
I'm hoping it's really in the people that we contracted. It's in their court, but they seem to be moving pretty quick now. So I'm hoping it's before that, but I'm just trying to be realistic. We're probably going to have to go back a couple of times and ping pong this thing back and forth, and I know legal's going to have to get involved and make their changes. I'm going to probably make some changes. I know you guys are, but we want to. I don't think we want to rush this. We want to have a good set of standards, because I do believe this is the future, and I do believe that we're in a very fluid environment right now. 4G is probably becoming passe over the next couple of years, and yet we're going to be installing 4G antennas. So it might be, and guys, I'm no expert on this, I'm not trying to be, but they could be here next year saying we got to take that antenna down and put a 5G up, and we got to put, because they don't have the range, we got to put one over there and one over there. So that's our reality. But hopefully the technology is such that they're creating smaller footprints, and who knows, maybe I can attach something to our streetlight heads. I don't know. That's certainly plausible, and in things that we don't even notice. That's what I'm hoping will come. I have my concerns, but I do know that people aren't supposed to be on their phones, but they are on their GPS, and they are calling their kids, and they get together in front of the schools, and that's true. There's a bunch of people, mothers on the phone trying to get in touch with their kids. So I think that this is coming. I mean, go further, autonomous cars. I mean, they might be talking to this network. We don't know. So I think we certainly try not to obstruct, but we need to control the documents, in my view. We need to control the application process and not these entities coming at us. I think if they could just give us some time, we can come to them with a reasonable set of documents and make something happen. I said I was going to be brief. It wasn't that brief.
Mr. Chair,
It was brief.
That was
enough.
brief for you.
No, you said it. I was going to say. Go ahead.
Dave, just
Yes, sir.
a question. Is there any possibility that these antennas could be put on top of the existing poles?
Yeah, there is. In fact, I think their number one spot a year ago was on an existing stub pole in front of Nicky's, which was pretty clean. And it captures one corner of the intersection.
Yeah.
It's probably a good place for them. We can get power to it. A lot of the boxes now I'm noticing, because now I notice them everywhere I see them, because I'm really studying them, aren't so big. They're narrow, and they're not much wider than the pole itself. So I notice everything when I drive by because it's my business, but I know most people don't. So if you didn't have this monstrosity and you had a thin profile and just a little bit of an extension, I don't know that a lot of people would notice that, the change.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
What's the average? How high are the other poles?
So they could be anywhere from, in this town, we have 70-foot poles going over the highway, but most of the time it's going to be about 40 feet.
Okay.
The one I spoke of, the stub guy pole in front of Nicky's, probably 30, 35. But I think that'll do it for them.
Yeah, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, if we back up and the light plant tries to take a role here, because I'd like to get the stress off of you guys if I can, and get it back where you have to make some very tough decisions in your right of way. If I can do that, of course, I certainly wouldn't be doing it in a vacuum. We would talk about it, because this is not a traditional deployment of my equipment where I have purview over it. Look, I'm distributing electricity, I'm putting a pole here, and that's, this is what I need to do. This is a change. This is something different. So I think we should definitely agree on it.
So as far as the time frame is concerned, let's take April, okay? I know we have a certain amount of time from application and blah, blah, blah. Are we still okay there? Go ahead.
Well, we opened the hearing within the 150-day. When they originally applied, there was a 150-day shot
Right.
clock. So we've met that technically. But we're going to have the hearing go past that date. So that part I'm not sure of. And then the way the FCC regulations state, as I understand them, the regulations, the local regulations have to be approved by April 1 and published by April 15.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're definitely not going to have regulations ready by April 1. We might have them a week later, or we might have them by the 15th and get it published. I mean, I don't know what the definition, the legal definition of publishing is. You know, if we publish them on our website, is that good enough? I mean, we can, I'm thinking maybe we should extend the hearing to at least April 8th. That's our first April Selectmen's meeting. It would be past the April 1 deadline, but before the April 15th deadline. The purpose of April 15th and April 1 is if you get the regulations done by then, they're retroactive, and would apply to their application. But I don't know if, you know, how. And then again, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal could stay the regulations. I don't know when, if it'd be nice if they stayed the regulations by April 1. But then again, who knows? They have their own, but they know the regulations take effect. I mean, the local regulations have that date. So I check daily to see if there's any activity in the Ninth Circuit, but I haven't seen any.
Recommendation here.
So,
If
just,
the-
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
If the applicant is, and this is just, I'm just throwing it out there, but, you know, this whole process, you know, typically when people want to come to town, right, it's the business owner that we speak to, right? And we have an attorney kind of right next to them, give them advice here. This whole process started off, we were just bombarded by attorneys, right? It came straight from the attorneys that, okay, we're putting a poll because we can. So with that said, I don't want to go beyond the deadline because we're working, you know, with attorneys, right? And we're doing it by the book, right? And that's going to be defense. That's going to be what, you know, if we go beyond it. So I'd like to ask the applicant if they would be okay that we deny the current application, because we know that we won't be able to get these in place by April 1st. But with that said, we'll work with the town to see if there are alternatives, if there are other ways that we can do it, and then file a new application. Would that be something that you guys would
Yeah,
do?
so I talked to Mike a lot about this. I think we're not going to take a posture where we'll just extend it by mutual agreement. We applied under the old FCC regime. We would like to keep that entitlement. But that being said, we will. You guys are wrestling with a bunch of tough questions. Like, we want to get this right with you. April 8th, April 15th, we'll come back as many times as you need us to. So what I came down here to say tonight was just keep the hearing open, and we'll extend it by mutual agreement. You know, I am the business in this case. You know, Mr. Power works for a law firm, but I am Tilson. You know, we're a small company, small privately held company, and you know, we understand what you're doing, and we're doing this in Norwood and Lexington and a bunch of other places. And I was just the planning director in Portland trying to write these regulations under the FCC gun. So we have no interest of jamming anything down anyone's throat right now, especially because we're working through this, and I know that the working group is coming up. So my request would just be that we agree to extend it, and I'll keep working with Mike and John, Mr. Schofield, to figure this out. Happy to look at any regulations you put forward and give you our feedback too. and come back when you ask me to and meet with them whenever you want. So that would be my request.
We would appreciate that.
Are you also open to, we were talking about what's the benefit to the town, and we're not really sure if this is going to benefit the citizens of the town, but is there anything that if we create a working relationship, that there could be some benefits to the town?
Yeah, well, I'll keep coming back with a better answer. I thought I had a good answer. I didn't, so I'll come back with, keep working on something else. One of the things that we generally, because the cost margin on these particular stations is low, getting the companies to move away from the wooden pole sets is generally challenging when you're just doing one. Sure, if you're doing downtown Boston, you're doing 100, but AT&T really was very open to looking at, and that's why I threw a bunch of them up at you. So as we talk about what can fit in the downtown, we'll entertain a discussion of addressing some of your other concerns, local benefit, fitting in with the master plan in the future, looking at alternative sites. So that's my homework. But in terms of, we'd like to request you keep the application open, don't act on it, and give us a chance to continue to work with staff and Mr. Schofield to figure out a good solution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, John. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. I want to give a kind of a bigger perspective. We've come a long way since we were first introduced to this proposal, and nobody really knew what to do with it. Hearing Dave tonight, that long way for me is that, you have an existing pole infrastructure downtown that's not going anywhere. You're not planning to put anything underground, right?
Be expensive.
Yeah, it would be a fantastic thing. A lot of cities have done that in the past, but for a small town to be able to afford to do something like that, probably next to impossible unless you got some grant from somewhere and the country's doing so great capital-wise that, you could actually put things underground. This being said, you have a lot of existing telephone poles in the downtown area that really offer the premium locations for these small cells without adding anything more vertical down there. So if you're trying to protect the aesthetic qualities of downtown, you have a lot of existing poles, again, that aren't going anywhere. That would be perfect locations for these small cells. And this is a long way from, 6 months ago when that was completely out of the question. The importance of all of this is the whole country is going in the direction of 5G. And now they're talking 6G. And I'm sure 10 years from now, it'll be up to 10G. We're not talking about cell phone towers anymore. We're talking about this whole technology and going from those monstrosities all over the place down to being mounted on telephone poles and really blending in to the scenery. As opposed to, these huge towers. Or, a lot of the cell phone towers of 15, 20 years ago were put in church steeples, which was a great place for them. No question about it. How many churches are now viable financially because of the wireless industry? I know plenty of churches have 3, 4, 5 carriers in them. And now their congregations are full because those congregations do not have to carry the full weight of maintaining, these huge churches and the heat costs and the electricity costs and everything else. All of that being said, I think over the next several weeks, whatever time it takes, for Dave to continue working on bylaws that will work for him in mounting these small cell antennas onto the existing pole infrastructure in town. That's really the way to go. And it eliminates, a lot of aesthetic stress that we don't want downtown. I do take total exception with comments that were made earlier that this isn't going to benefit the townspeople. I mean, probably 50% of the traffic is, local centric going through there. And just to be able to have better cell phone capacity, I know we're not supposed to be on them, but everybody seems to be on them. And, if your hand's off, you're on your cell phone. And just to have better communication going through town is not a benefit just for the passers-by that have nothing to do with the town, but for the townspeople that use those roadways. Those roadways aren't congested because of out-of-towners. They're congested because of in-town people going east, west, north, south, bringing their kids to and from school, coming to town hall, just going anywhere. So it is a benefit to the town. What I'm so much interested in and concerned about is to make sure that this town, and I've written to board members, planning board members, and board of selectmen, I'm sure you've had copies of this, is to make sure that we're not missing the boat on going along with the rest of the country in staying up to speed with technology and becoming as fast and effective with our telecommunications infrastructure that we possibly can. I've spent a lot of time reading up on everything internet and what's going on in this world. And this internet capacity, this 5G internet capacity is 10 times faster than what we have right now with 4G, 10 times faster. The employment projections are 80 new jobs for every 1,000 people that connect to the 5G network. And this isn't space age technology. This is stuff that's happening right now. And there's a worldwide race for countries to become fully engaged and up to speed and running on 5G. China, Russia, all through Europe, they're all competing with us. And this country has to get its act together and stay out of the court systems and fighting this thing for a few years, because all these other countries in the world will be miles ahead of the US. And the faster high-speed technology wireless you have, the better off you're going to be as an economy. Could go on and on and on, but I won't. I think I was 2 minutes shorter than you, too.
Good. That's great.
So,
How does the rest of the planning board feel about this so far?
the planning board wants to make sure, and again, I've written to the board about this, and everybody seems to be in agreement. We're trying to blend in, if this is coming our way, to blend it in to the existing environment as much as possible. You know, we don't want these sore thumb monopoles sticking up everywhere. Just get rid of as much new vertical involved with these things as possible. And the existing vertical, there's plenty of that already. Again, it's not going anywhere, so utilize it to the extent possible. And, that's telephone poles that are already there. They're all in good shape. And, when you see 3 or 4 transformers on a pole, as opposed to, typically you see 1. But these poles, vertical poles, have a lot of weight capacity. And, this whole argument of poles and utilities going on them has been going back since the beginning of time with these things. First it was electricity, there was street lights that go on them. And then cable industry came about in the 70s, and that was a huge battle, and they won that battle. This battle is going to be won because wireless communication capacity is everything, And it's true, voice over wireless, that data capacity isn't necessary. It's what's going over. It's all the wireless data that's being transformed over the internet, wireless internet, that needs to be increased, And maybe those cable wires will go away someday because of this wireless capacity. At least they're going to be a competitor, that's for sure.
Questions for John?
I'll just make a comment, because I've heard 3 times about how you're not supposed to be on a phone, and I totally agree, but, the way it is today, I get in the car and the phone rings, I just push a little button on the steering wheel now, and I can talk, my radio shuts off, and, I'm like, what's this? But it's there, it's coming, I mean...
You're starting to embrace the tech now, huh, Gary?
I haven't quite figured it all out yet, but yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Anybody over here? Mike, anybody in town use AT&T? I mean, who's our carrier? Do you know?
They all bounce off each other so much that I think it's difficult to say.
Anybody use the AT&T network?
I use it.
I share.
I know there's people.
I use Verizon.
AT&T.
All our phones are Verizon.
It's tough. It's tough in town hall.
Haven't had any issues. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I said I have AT&T. I never really experienced it.
Well, I'm more talking. Does the police department use,
No, we use
fire
Verizon
department
for the town.
Verizon? Okay.
Also,
would have
you
been
know,
more of an
if-
argument for
if we
me if
continue-
someone else had. All right.
There is
Honestly, I don't really care who you guys have for providers. So
We can throw out the dates and that,
So-
but I think if we continue the hearing, you know, we're doing our best in good faith to move on and work here.
One other,
You know,
one other point before I forget. There is, as small as downtown is, there is an economic development value involved with better wireless.
Yep.
You know, it just is. Whether you're sitting in a restaurant and, you know, being able to stay connected or whatever is coming our way, because we're really trying our best and there is a potential for, you know, moving downtown along finally. If you were at the meeting the other day, you'd know that.
Just a comment.
If my wife didn't have kids, I would be fine.
No, but you're going to be there tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's the
John,
next
on-
meeting.
On the flip side, though, and not, you know, not that there's a halo around my head here, but, you know, part of this stuff too is contributing to the problems in society. You know, you talk about people going out to eat, being able to get on their phones. I don't know how many times you've probably seen it, right? People go out to eat and they don't talk to each other because they're on their phones. So we want people to have really fast internet speeds. For what reason? And I think the key to all this here is it's what the telecommunications company are telling us that we need. And I personally, I don't think we need it, right? I'd be fine with what we have now. I don't think we need any advanced technology in this downtown area of ours. I'm not talking about, you know, across the country, but, you know, you got to look at the flip side of it too, you know?
No, I do.
This
I
is
do.
a small community, small rural community, and if we're not up with the times on everything else in you know, when it comes to development, when it comes to roadways, if we can't keep up with that technology, why do we have to keep up with having high speed?
It helps, it will help in the future when it's up and running to keep people from having to get in the car all the time.
I
Less
just
vehicle
want
miles
people to
traveled.
know, you know, you got to remember what you're asking for, and are you asking, you know, to contribute to what's wrong with the society? And I know this isn't the place for it, but I thought
All right, everybody here, give up their cell phones. You know, give up your cable TV. And let's get rid of electricity while we're at it.
You went over the 2 minutes.
And then you get candles and we all go to bed early. I don't know.
All right, so listen, gentlemen, thank you everyone for attending tonight. Thank you for the information. I concur. Why don't we keep this open, okay, so that we can kind of communicate further from here.
When are we going to have them in?
Yep.
yeah, I think
To avoid the necessity of re-notifying everybody, we need to pick a date certain.
you threw out a date, the 8th of
April 8th.
We'll continue to April 8th.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's continue to April 8th.
If we don't have it, then we'll just have to re-advertise at that point.
So do we need a motion on that?
I just made a motion to
Yeah.
continue to April 8th.
Oh, second.
Okay. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion is second for the continuance. All those in favor? Aye. Fantastic. So April 8th it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right. Good deal. All right, so moving forward, right? Just when we thought, I'm not sure.
Stretch coat.
Excuse me, sir. Are you here for a certain specific on the agenda?
No, I'm sorry. I'm John Kaczynski. I'm the head of facilities for Salem 5 Bank, and I just wanted to make sure
Oh,
that
okay.
any aesthetic concerns that we may have had,
Yeah.
but you guys blew them away, so that was great.
Well, welcome, John. I'm sorry, we just didn't know if you were waiting for something on the agenda.
No, I just wanted to to just make sure that nothing ugly happened, and
Yeah.
and you obviously are all very well concerned about that, and thank you for that. Thank you for the service. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate
He
it.
was one of the, we notified the bank as one of the abutters. All the abutters downtown
Oh, I was gonna, yeah, because
were
that's
notified.
Mass General Law, Chapter 66, something 22, yeah, I was gonna ask about that, so, okay, great.
So thank you for joining. We appreciate it. And certainly stay if you'd like. I just wanted to make sure you weren't on the agenda or whatever.
Just looking for someplace warm.
Wish I could even offer you coffee. I can't honestly give you coffee.
More fun to be had.
Take care now. Enjoy the rest of the night. All right. So Mike, why don't we go to the warrants?
Okay. Well, generally, we make a motion to close the warrant and then discuss it.
Just remind me again, when should the warrant be closed by?
Today.
Oh, so close it means prior to us. Don't add anything else. Providing a vote whether we support it, or what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we could have a discussion, you close the warrant, and that essentially says nobody else in the general public can submit petition warrant articles.
Right.
Okay.
We've had it open for 6 weeks. That's generally what we do. We usually have it open the first week of January, and middle of February it closes, but we're a month off, which is not a bad thing. But, so the board should make a motion to close the warrant and the special town meeting warrant as well.
Okay.
Someone's got that written out for us, so I'll say, I move to close the annual and special town meeting warrants for May 6, 2019.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any discussion on that?
Well,
Okay.
now what are these other motions that are on this piece of paper, Mike, Bill? Because there's also some things to place on the annual warrant for May 6 and recommend approval of.
Yes. That's
So wouldn't that
our
be-
next,
Well,
that's
wouldn't we
what our
have to reopen it to place something on it?
No.
Okay, because in the past, we did do it that way.
Well, we just want to close the ability for petition warrant articles. That's what you're doing
Okay.
by this motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now, you have the,
Nay.
you have the authority to put warrant articles on the warrant. It's your warrant.
Okay.
We're closing it for the
For the public.
Yes.
Yep. All right.
See, that's the part I don't understand, but I guess things have evolved over the years.
5G, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get to that. Oh, and if you want to move, John's here to speak on some of the planning board warrant articles. So if we could not take them in order and just let John discuss some of these first.
Okay. I have 3 handouts, and there's one for everybody, except that big one there.
The trees.
Mike, I'll make sure you don't miss that. But, and then this.
Take one, and then the others are coming around. That should be it, I guess.
I assume you already have one of these.
I don't think so. I'd probably do it in an email.
Did you drop one off there? No, I didn't. stretch. Excuse me. Let me make sure I don't have two here. No.
Do you have another green community?
This one here,
Is that yours? No, that's
yeah.
all right. I'm good.
I'll be able to put that one up on the screen here.
Oh, that's
So,
Awesome. Of that list of bylaws, is there anything in particular you want me to start out with, or
no, you can,
see if this is the one I need here? Mike, what do you have on the list?
I just jumped ahead. Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to,
We've got 3 letters from you.
Okay.
One is about the streets. And that's about your zoning planning board.
street acceptance, public hearing,
Marijuana change.
Yeah.
And then stretch vote.
Okay. On the streets, the planning board, we had a meeting, our last planning board meeting, did a lot of research on the 4 requested streets, one being Chaplain Hills Road, Martell, Maureen, and the 4th one was Martell, Maureen, Chaplain Hills Road, and
Longview. Longview?
yeah.
Long Hill, I mean.
Yeah, Longview, actually, Longview. Okay, what we determined at the last meeting was that Chaplain Hills Road is ready to go to town meeting for acceptance as a public way. The other 3 roadways have some long-standing, outstanding issues that have yet to be resolved. The planning board has agreed that this year we're going to work on all of the roadways. That was an effort that was undertaken some years ago by Nick Cracknell and the planning board. And since the time Nick left the position, it's pretty much been left in a void state, but we're ready to pick up on that and get that rolling. And for this town meeting, Chaplain Hills Road is ready for town acceptance. And that's what we're recommending to the Board of Selectmen to consider.
So on that, you're looking for, if we have a town meeting, a special town meeting in the fall?
No,
at the
this
earliest?
would be for this.
Not for Chaplain Hills, for the other 3.
The other 3, yeah, there's a good
It's
possibility.
that or next spring.
Yeah. We're just going to continue on and not drop the ball from here on
Okay.
out. So the board wants to make it a priority this year to do that work.
so which is the only one, John?
First one,
Yeah, Chaplain Hills Road.
All right.
19-17.
And we were in communication with Attorney Eichman on this to make sure that we're doing everything right, and he did recommend. Yeah. Matter of fact, Chaplain Hills Road was ready back in 2011, and it just didn't happen. No, this thing is overheating or something here. Let's see if it's... Nope. It's just warming up. Okay. Now, what's the next one, please?
I think you had the,
I don't have the agenda This doesn't have anything on it.
Well, perhaps ATM 19-24, that was doing limitation, oh no, that's ours. The other one before there, I think. ATM 19-23, a zoning bylaw, article, I can't read those letters. Marijuana business, section 165-161H and I. Just a required separation distance of marijuana businesses.
Yeah. What we're finding out with some of the proposals, one in particular, property is under agreement on Norino Way, and this particular property directly abuts one of the residential districts, and the separation right now calls for 300 feet between directly from property line to property line, so residential district to the marijuana overlay district. If those two meet, that 300-foot distance, there's no measurement there, so that property is no longer available to be occupied by a marijuana business. And when you get the ruler out and start measuring around the perimeter of the overlay district, the marijuana overlay district, it null and voids quite a few properties. I can pull them up on the map if you'd like, but a lot of the properties are within 200 feet, 150 feet. So in effect, the overlay district becomes much reduced relative to its potential, for development purposes when it comes to the marijuana industry. So this particular ordinance that's being proposed would have the measurement from the marijuana building or buildings, the nearest marijuana building, to the nearest use of the property, nearest abutting use of the property for residential purposes, or buildings, or public pools or recreational facilities, any type of schools. It would be from the nearest marijuana building to the nearest building that's being utilized, or part of the property that's being utilized for children activities.
Okay.
So does that shrink the requirement then?
Well, it goes, right now it's from point to point. It's from property line to property line.
Right.
It's from zoning district to zoning district. This would change it in the manner that it would be from the marijuana building, the actual building that's occupied by the marijuana industry, versus the nearest point of, residential dwellings, backyards, schools.
It's 300 feet still?
Yeah, it would still be that 300-foot distance. But what we found out when you look at this map in the overlay district and that 300-foot buffer, when it's point to point, lot line to lot line, district to residential district, it eliminates a lot of potential use of the marijuana industry within that overlay district. Because it's not deep. It runs along the highway, but it's not a deep overlay district whatsoever. So it really cuts into. I can pull it up on the.
So instead of property lines, we're just doing point from the building to the property.
That allows
Corner of a building to building.
or facilities to.
Yeah, it would allow for the potential. But right now, it's just, we don't even have an overlay district. That's what it really boils down to. It's because it's from point to point. Yeah, it takes away a lot. Trying to, cover a 300-foot of distance to be away from all the prohibited uses.
And your board's having a public hearing on that, 27th of March at 7 PM up here.
That's correct.
Oh, the state
You're
is.
going to fill us in on that there.
Yeah.
The state is 500, right, from property line.
500, it's a local option to be reduced.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
So the proposal here, just so the townspeople know, is that we're in favor of shrinking or of reducing that requirement as opposed to what the state suggests as a guideline.
Well, the 300-foot distance is already in place. It's
No,
just.
I understand that, but now we're making it even, you could build probably closer to any type of a school or a place where kids have not a school, like a place where kids congregate, right?
No, it sounds like they're giving you a distance to measure, I think. if that's
Right,
Changing
right
the-
now, it doesn't, I just say it's more practical, it's from the building, the nearest point of the building to the nearest 300-foot distance of residential use, children congregating.
Right, so that's
Yeah.
my point. So the way that it is today,
Yeah.
it's a greater,
Yeah, theoretically, it could be
we're
1,000 feet.
shrinking it down
Yeah,
even more than what it is today. in the bylaw.
Well, it just depends on where you're measuring from. That's the key. Right now, you could be 1,000 feet away from, the both activities, because it's point to point. Like, we're dealing with an elongated property on Norino. It's far longer than it is deep.
Yeah.
And the length of this lot and where they're putting the building is 800 feet away from the nearest property line or district line of the residential district. So right now, it's actually working more than 300 feet. In this particular case, it's close to 1,000 feet away.
Yeah, and I just want people to know what they're
Yeah.
going to vote for, right? So it's making it less restrictive
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the marijuana
Yeah,
business.
and we have not come to a conclusion. The public hearing for this zoning amendment is next week. Actually, not next week, the week after, the 27th.
27.
Yeah. So that's on the table, and where it goes,
Well, I don't see this less restrictive,
right.
because you can have land that you can't use, or where you're situating a building, and that land may go this way, and the border of it, it winds up being within 300 feet, but your
Yeah.
building's gonna be way down here.
Right. The effective distance stays the same.
Right.
That's what everybody should
Right.
realize.
So it's still 300 feet.
Yeah, it's still 3. Okay. And then the other one that we're dealing with is a simple one. It's better defining the definition for building and the definition for building height. Right now, there's a lot of contradiction with the present definition for building. The present definition includes a lot more to do with height than it does with building. And then right after building, there's the definition for building height, and that doesn't come close to representing what building heights that are allowed of buildings within the zoning district. So we're just cleaning up that aspect of it. And that's another public hearing we're having March 27th. And then that's that one. If anybody has any questions, the last one we're dealing with. We ended up having over a 2-hour presentation by Neil Duffy. He's the regional coordinator for the Green Communities Program in Massachusetts. I promise you I won't take 2 hours of time in regard to this. Please don't. And you wouldn't let me anyway, so basically, I think the town went through this not that long ago and did not move forward with it. This program's been in place since 2010, and since that period of time, over 240 of the 315 communities in Massachusetts are now green certified communities, and perhaps more than just becoming a greener state and more energy efficient. There's a huge carrot involved with this program, and I just want to point this out to you. Amesbury, one of our close by suburbs, Boxford, Haverhill, Newburyport, North Andover, and West Newbury, just for example, if you can see up here, this is the amount of money they've acquired being members of the Green Community Program. Amesbury, 899,000. Newburyport is approaching $1 million. These are sizable numbers. Boxford, 131. Now, just by Georgetown becoming a green community or a member of the green community, the growing green community group of municipalities, we would be automatically eligible to receive $140,000. And annually, they're talking about communities being able to compete for $250,000 annually. And if you've been paying attention just recently in the State House, they're talking about $1 billion green community incentive grant program that's being worked on. In all likelihood, it looks like it's going to have a green outcome.
Are they trying to promote alternative energy sources?
Yeah. But there's more money in the horizon for this in this state, and the only way we're going to ever be eligible to, acquire some of this type of funding is by being a green community. Now, there's 5 criteria, and I just want to go over this briefly so you understand this stuff. Adopt as-of-right sightings for alternative energy and renewable energy generation, R&D, or manufacturing. We already have that in place. By right, meaning just by site plan approval. Industrial uses, R&D, office spaces, all of that is already allowed on a by right basis within certain zoning districts. Adopt expedited permitting process. We pretty much already have that in place through the site plan review process. Create an energy reduction plan to reduce energy use by 20% over the next 5 years. That's one of the tasks that the town has to commit to, but the Green Communities Division of the state would be willing to work with us to accomplish that. And what that really entails is putting together the energy data utilized by municipal buildings, school buildings.
Question to that. We've sort of done that, if I
That's
may,
right.
Mr. Chair. So does that make us eligible?
Well, we already have a database. We know how to acquire it and update it, so that would be part of the process, updating what we have in place already. So, and Mike, I think, knows more about this than I do. Am I correct?
I don't know about that, but
Adopt fuel-efficient vehicle purchase policy. Now, that's not a criteria that we have to worry about because emergency vehicles do not apply to that. And the equipment that Peter has to purchase, most of that equipment is over 3/4 ton. And 3/4 ton heavier equipment, vehicle equipment, does not have to comply with this. But just to give you a for instance, our F-150 pickup truck is energy efficient to meet the standard. So it's a light duty pickup truck. I don't know how many light duties Peter would be purchasing, but that's not a big to do. Let's see. So and there are no, there's no fleet for just general vehicles in the community. Mike, you don't have a car, do you?
not a town car, no.
I don't either. So there aren't any hand-me-down, Crown Vics running around.
No, but that I got
Get rid of them a long
Most of the
time
newer
ago.
cruisers are 6 cylinders, I think some
Yeah.
4s, so they may
Yeah.
actually be meeting that,
Yeah. So
even though they're exempt, yeah.
So basically, we meet all 4 criteria, and the 5th one is that we don't have in place is the stretch energy code.
Okay.
And I want to be as concise, clear about this as possible. Les Godden, who has to work with the building codes, is on board, fully on board with this proposal. As a matter of fact, and just talking with them today, The energy requirements that he is practicing with residential and commercial developers, they're already practicing energy codes that are more stringent than what the state's requiring in the stretch code. So it's not a stretch, and it's not a pain or any added workload to Les in making sure that the stretch energy code that we could possibly adopt and moves forward and becomes part of the criteria for acquiring a building permit. You know, I could go on and on about this, but if you have any questions about it, fire away. I did give you, as one of the handouts tonight, all of the questions and answers having to do with the stretch energy code. That's that 9-page document, and that really handles every question in an easily understandable manner that you may have. And I'm trying not to throw a bunch of stuff at you tonight and say, hey, you got to do it tonight. If you're going through that and you do have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. And then the last document,
Yeah, John, if I could just interject. One thing, when a builder comes to the building department, invariably, the first question is, do you have stretch code? And because as you saw, all these other towns surrounding us have them. So most builders are, as John and Les said, they're following these codes already. So it's not going to put any kind of burden on
So
builders.
if you're saying that if we say, well, no, we don't, but they still go and build their project under stretch code?
Well, they're used to doing it, yeah. And I don't know that, Les would have to tell you the cost differential. They're just doing it.
yeah. I mean, they're used to doing it. It's surrounding us. If you can see this map, it's all green. And there's a little enclave here of off-white.
So John, what do we need, a town vote to opt into
Yeah,
this?
so this is it. The last handout, stretch code adoption process, and I went over this with Attorney Eichman. This is a warrant article that's put forward at an annual town meeting by the Board of Selectmen. And on page 2 of this particular handout this evening, page 2 has the actual motion that would apply. And then there's a motion for the warrant article. And what I did on page 3 was actually, again, working with Attorney Eichman, came up with the language that needs to be adopted for the town of Georgetown new stretch energy code. And that would be adopting the stretch energy code as Chapter 29 building construction. And it's a matter of eliminating the present language within Chapter 29 and replacing it with stretch energy code.
John, a couple questions. Is there a downside to this? I mean, these are a nice amount of communities here, but
Yeah.
why isn't Raleigh doing? Why isn't Groveland? Why isn't Danvers? Why isn't? There's a lot of communities out here. So, is there a downside to this?
Well, a lot of those towns, they haven't really got up to speed with it. A lot of towns, don't have professional planning or, people that are engaged in this stuff. But the only downside at this point in time, and I'd say earlier there was a downside because you really had to buy into the fleet, and that was a big expense. Now everybody is buying energy efficient vehicles. But in Georgetown, that doesn't apply. Another important point is we're a municipal light town, and we didn't adopt this earlier because the state statute would have required the consumer, the electric power consumer in this town, to pay a little bit more on their electric bill. Now, the law has been changed since it was first adopted, and a municipality that has its own light power company, if you have a large entity that's purchasing power outside of the municipal light department, then that added charge to the consumer does no longer applies. So at this point in time, to become a green community for Georgetown, it doesn't have a problem increasing. There is no increase in the municipal light bill, the light bill for the consumer. And that's the most important change from the last time this community looked at this.
So what are we doing with 140,000 if we get it? You know, like what are your thoughts on what we do with that money? I mean, you know, because I know there are restrictions to what we can do with the money.
Well, the first order of business, if we do adopt the stretch energy code, then we become eligible, a green community eligible to apply for the $140,000. Part of that is just to do the energy audit, to get that up to speed and find out where we can start implementing cost savings.
Okay.
You know, insulation, better windows. You know, I envision that, you know, part of this, you know, in some year to come, we'll be eligible to put, you know, get a grant to put new windows in here, which right now is cost prohibitive. And you have to be historically sensitive to the building too. So, you know, eventually, you know, there might be enough funding to put new windows and make this building, just by putting new windows, would make this building much more energy efficient. I mean, in a windy day, you know, you gotta put a paperweight on your desk.
And this is all state funded?
That's with the windows closed.
This is all state funded?
Yes, state, and then this, I believe there's federal monies involved too.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Just a quick question for you, John. So it looks like to date, there's over
240.
pounds that are, so this right here is only the
The newest
as
ones.
of December 18th?
Yeah.
Okay. Have we looked into, thinking about the, geez, I just lost my train of thought here. The 3% that we give, it's the 3%.
What, CBC?
Yes, JPC money, right? It was a very lucrative thing to do way back, right? There weren't a whole lot of towns doing it. Do we know if here, you know, because it's increased so much, 240, has the amount of grants, has that gone down? Are they able to fund it?
No, it's gone up. Actually, it's over $20 million in grants. There's a page here.
That's a concern I would have, right, is that today's CPC has gone down because there's a lot of communities that are now enrolled and they don't have enough to fund.
Well,
all of it.
that's what I wanted to point out. Again, the state is engaged right now through the House and the Senate, and they're trying to agree to a number, but they're looking at adding $1 billion in revenue for grants having to do with green.
With green, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Everything green.
Go ahead, Doug.
John, over the past, I don't know how many years, in the real estate industry, there has been proposed legislation to require energy audits on residential buildings prior to them being able to close. It's never gone anyplace. It's always been defeated.
Yeah.
And Governor Baker is proposing a whole glut of money for climate change legislation and workarounds. So does any of this have anything to do as a backdoor way to, that you know of or have you heard of, to require home energy audits for residential sellers? Prior to
For
closing?
new construction?
Well, it doesn't matter, any of them, even existing.
I haven't heard anything about existing.
Well, there
Yeah.
has been, it's not, like I said, it's never
Yeah.
done anything, it's never gone anywhere,
Yeah.
right, but it keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if somehow some of this isn't
I think that's a good question that maybe someone
Backdoor.
should try to get an answer for.
Yeah, you know, it could go that way because look, you could call up, you could have an old home, and, you can call up your energy company to come in and do an energy audit, and they do that. And there, at one point, I don't know if the money still exists, but there was a ton of money for people to, update their insulation, lighting, appliances.
Still is.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, all of this is good because it reduces the amount of energy utilized to heat our homes, and that's all a good thing. Obviously, the government imposing something that's going to cost you money that you don't have sounds a little unconstitutional. You're not going to force people on the street because they...
Because the gold makes the rules.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I know the country is acting a little crazy lately, but that's going.
Well, I didn't know what you had heard in your conversations with other agencies and all.
They'd have to come up with, I would just suggest that they'd have to come up with a pool of funding, that would help people be able to pay for that, if not the whole thing.
Okay, so you don't know if it has anything to do with it, all right.
No. So that sounds like some betterment thing. We're going to put sewerage in, and everybody's got to tie in, and this is how much it's going to cost. And,
It all has to do with energy usage and...
Right. Part of this whole big presentation here, and I'm not going to get into it, is how much money it costs to implement this code for a new construction. New house, it's roughly $3,000. But the energy savings comes back, tenfold over the life of the house. But it's like 2 to 3 years, you make that up in savings. So,
Gary, go ahead.
It all sounds so good, I get very nervous about tying in with the state. Now, I've read in other communities that are green communities where contractors come in and they're gonna, they propose this, we're gonna build you a village-type setting, and it's gonna be powered on its own, it's gonna have gardens. How does that work in, and what say does the town have on a question of that type? Something of that sort was proposed.
Built in to the law, a community at any time can pull out. So once you're in, you're not stuck in there. You can pull out if this isn't for you.
Do we have to give the money back?
You gotta give them 2 times the money back.
It could be.
Let's see.
I mean, they've got expedited permitting in there, and so to me, it sort of sounds like, how much say will we have if we have someone comes in and says, oh, look at Georgetown's got this tract of land, and I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna build a village.
Yeah.
And we're not
They
prepared
might-
for it.
they might-
Kind of like cell
Yeah,
towers.
they might come out and whack you with a wet noodle, but I don't think they're gonna take the money back. It just, it's one of those things. And I'm not saying you guys gotta do this tonight, it's whatever you wanna do and whatever length of time it takes you to study it and be comfortable with it. Great. I'm not here to shove this down your throat, but I'm just saying, the town would be eligible just by doing this one ordinance to be eligible for $140,000 and other hundreds of thousands of dollars to come. And everything having to do with the state, with grants and everything, it's all going to be tied up in this green community stuff. All these communities are getting money that we could be getting our share of. This is not adopting anything that Les is already not practicing every single day. So it's not a hidden trap door that's going to, bury you and forget about you.
No, I mean, for myself,
Yeah. This is not a trick.
Les
This
is one of the guys I do hope, Mr. Chair, to try to get in and, talk about him, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels unless they want to get him here. But, I've got concern being, I built my home. I've done stuff like that. I've always,
John, planning board vote on this already, you said?
We got the presentation, and they gave me the go-ahead to move forward with it, and we are dealing with the tight
Yeah,
time.
this one, I think, falls on us somehow, correct?
This one does. You know, this is definitely, you guys, when we got our presentation and my follow-up with Attorney Eichman, he made it clear, this is a Board of Selectmen issue. You know, just my advice, if you want to do it, I'm not pretending to be an expert on this whole thing, but 240 communities and growing, there'll probably be 300 by the end of the year. We can be one of the 15 if you want to, but that pool of money is not going to be, we're not going to be eligible to apply for it, you know. So-
They told us at one point, regionalize your schools and they'll give us all the money we need for transportation, and they changed the rules. So,
Well,
fortunately, we didn't buy in.
I'm not a big government
Yeah.
guy either,
Yeah.
believe it or not. So if it wasn't a good deal, I wouldn't be advancing it. But all this does is codify what Les is already doing.
Yeah.
There isn't one building being built in this town that isn't already, you know, doing what's
And so,
required.
if I'm correct, it's just this part of it that we're acting on, the Stretch Energy Cove,
Yeah.
it looks like.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, how does the town apply? I mean, who follows up with that? Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Town Planner?
Yeah. Working with
Under whose-
everybody.
Okay.
You know, working with everybody. It's just like the erosion and stormwater control regulations. We're finalizing those right now as we speak, and, you know, those will be in place. This is more beneficial than the Complete Streets program. And
I hope so. We know what happened there.
however, we did get 97 done, the whole thing.
Can I continue a little bit? I mean,
A few minutes.
you know, one of the
We gotta get
questions we
moving.
asked Mike was about grants when we were going over his review, and like he said, unfortunately, this town isn't eligible for a lot of grants. How is this different from that perspective that we got because of the fact that, I guess our town had a little more income than some of the surrounding towns, so do you know if that's taking into effect on the grants also under the Green Energy Program?
Yes. Is it?
That's part of the formula. Like, I think that's probably one of the reasons why Boxford got the least amount of money in that.
Yeah, so it still applies.
You still get some, but it's based, that's one of your criteria.
There's your formula right there. Designation grant equals 125K plus population plus per capita income formula.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we get 140.
Got more low-income people, too.
Yeah. So,
All right, well, John, thank you very much for the info on that.
I hope I was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I encourage everyone to take a good look at that. Yeah, I think it's, on the surface, it looks like a
Is
good
this
program.
already
so.
attached to the warrant?
I think it was.
There's a placeholder.
Oh,
Yeah, the exact language isn't there, but,
okay. No, it's on there with the placeholder.
Yeah.
yeah.
If you're seriously considering, on page 2 of this handout here, it does have the motion, and that's chapter 29 of the town of Georgetown.
Yeah, that's the last one, Doug. That's 19-25.
And then there's the sample town meeting motion, too. if you want.
If that ends up on the warrant, we need someone to explain that at town meeting.
Yeah, and Neil Duffy,
Yeah.
he already accepted an invitation, so
Okay.
he'll be there. You're not going to, I don't
gonna
want
be
you
a
to
long one.
rely on me.
Yeah.
This guy's the expert, and we'll tell him, keep it to 5 minutes, not 2 hours.
All right,
All right, great.
good deal. John, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah,
See you bright and early.
yeah. 7:30. Don't forget, you guys.
You bringing the donuts?
You want them?
No.
What kind?
Whose bright idea was that, by the way?
What's that?
Whose bright idea was that?
It was consensus.
You weren't there, so we
I
said,
know
we're going
this.
back to the AM. See, when you're not there, you become chairman of the group, or you get the time changed.
Do you know when we had a meeting tonight?
It was.
That all meetings go to 10 o'clock?
It was unanimous.
All right, Mike, where are we?
Yeah, well, I'd like to stay in the back of the warrant and talk about ATM 1924, limitations of adult use marijuana retailers. That was discussed at last meeting, and the board voted 3-2 to reduce the number of licenses to 10% of the retail alcoholic beverages. And that's what you have there, that's the language.
Okay.
Steve and I did talk about this once we had a discussion with KP Law, because the board specifically said 10%, but it was the recommendation of legal counsel that if you just want one, just say one. Don't, because if you go by percentages,
Yeah, if they ever increase.
if the laws change, we get more licenses. Then you're going to have more than one.
Well, and I think that's what the,
And just for everyone's knowledge, I told Mike to keep it as is, because that's what we voted on.
Yeah.
And I just said that if we want to bring it up, and if we want to change it, we can. If not, we can keep it to whatever it was before, so.
okay. Well, again, I think the notion was really designed
For one, yeah.
for one, right? So it is my opinion, we should just put one. You know, if we can put one, then let's do it. I mean, that's what we're really shooting for here.
I'd be fine with that if you get.
Is that, do we need a vote on that, or can we?
Yeah.
All right, so someone want to make a motion?
So I make a motion that we amend, what's the article number?
18, 19, 24.
18, 19, 24,
No, ATM 19,
oh,
24.
ATM 1924, to change or replace the 10% with the number 1.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Discussion on that? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Same 3-2. All right, Mike?
Yeah, and then Article, ATM 1921, that was
that was
the
it.
speed limit, townwide speed limit.
Yep.
So we're good to go with that for 25 miles an hour in thickly settled business districts.
Mm-hmm.
To keep it
Right.
on the,
So this is the legislation for the 25-mile-an-hour community.
correct,
In thickly settled areas, right?
thick business districts or
Or it could be
Thickly
for
settled.
any road other than the state-owned.
So basically, it's the whole town,
Yeah,
right?
that's the.
I did try, actually, I had a person recommend to try to go 25 in town, like all the way, like for a whole day, and it was tough.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, 25, I thought
When you used to
25 was
drive
just
50
like,
every place.
I thought 25 was for side roads and like 133,
30
what?
30 miles an hour.
Is what it is now. We're proposing 25, right?
Yeah, the law allows us now to change it to 25.
But we're not talking about now 133, where
No,
you could go.
it's-
Okay. All right, I
No,
just-
just thickly settled and anything that isn't a state highway,
Okay, good enough.
basically.
All right.
So you could take North Street, which is currently 35, and say it's 25.
I don't know.
Is North Street a state-owned road?
No, but you see, there's a definition of thickly settled. There's
And I
so
guess-
many houses
yeah,
within
right.
within an area. And it probably changes as the road goes on, because that's what came up on West Street.
Right.
You know, they wanted it on West Street, but there's sections on West Street where there's not even a house. So that's not thickly settled.
What I'm saying is,
You may get into having to have it designated? Who designates it?
The wording for a 25-mile-an-hour city or community, when you see it on the sign, like when you drive into Beverly, it says Beverly is a 25-mile-an-hour city, except we're posted
You're right.
differently.
Yes, I think that's the one that this is
That's
going for.
that's the one I think
Yeah.
we're voting.
So
Yeah.
question on that then, I understand that we spoke about, we only have to put up a few signs, right, as opposed to all street.
17 maybe, yeah.
But on the flip side now, do we have to put whether a street is thickly
Not that I'm, not to my
or
knowledge.
do we have to put up more signs if it's not 25?
I think it's the way that, like, if North Street, you want to leave it as it is, you don't really know if it's thickly settled or not. You leave it
just
posted as
leave
is.
up the sign. You
You
don't
you
have to
go
put
down one
additional
of these
sign.
probably cul-de-sacs, they probably all qualify as thickly settled because the houses are.
Sure.
And so when you get in one of them, it should be 25, I
Okay.
believe. I mean, we've gone over this a little bit on the traffic study committee.
Okay.
Yeah, we should probably talk with Chief Cudmore, because there was a resident who sent him an email and us an email about a street-by-street determination
Yeah.
of speed limits.
Right.
And I believe the chief's response was that that the law had been adjusted somehow, that we were able to do that, but I don't know.
I have had that discussion with Chief already, and he's on board with this.
He's on board with the 25.
The 25, the thickly settled, they're not going street by street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's based on that email.
Yeah.
That I called him and asked him about that.
Okay, then we can jump to the front of the town warrant,
The annual or
the annual.
okay.
Well, actually, we probably want to, because there's basically there's competing warrant articles on the spring town meeting and the annual town meeting. And that would be, well, Article 1 and Article 2 are standard. Article 3, 4, and 5, that's our regular pick a number and fund the stabilization capital fund and other post-employment OPEB fund. Now, the articles, the competing articles are on the Springtown meeting, where it invokes the new law that allows, and in this case, we're going to dedicate the adult use marijuana excise tax to the to the stabilization fund. And it has to be not less than 25% for a minimum of 3 years. So
So 25% of what, Mike?
of the excise tax.
23% of the
On the
excise. Gotcha.
recreational.
Okay.
Excellent.
So if we did that, we'd be using, tagging 75% of all the excise revenue. Or, some combination thereof, but we'd have to decide.
And the remainder goes into the general fund.
Yes. So the way this is set up, 25% would go to the general fund, and because we have the Springtown meeting first, if this didn't pass, then you still have a chance to fund those funds with direct dollars. I'm not saying you could leave them both on, but you can't pass both of them, because
Right.
although you technically could, because these other,
So if they pass on the Springtown meeting, then we just pass these over.
you pass
That just
over.
gave you the, well, no, if we did
We
them
do
on the
the-
Springtown meeting, on the special town meeting,
Do the special
Yeah.
that now
town
gives you the
meeting
funds to use at the annual town meeting?
No, because
Okay.
it would automatically
Start going in there.
go in for
Okay.
FY 2020.
Now, part of what I think this is this is part of our policy, because we've usually taken a certain amount of free cash that comes back at the end of the year and try to fund this. But that also, I think, usually got done in the fall, after the,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we do in the spring, I mean, in the spring, is pay down the snow and ice deficit.
typically.
And then if there's money left over, but the policy we're trying to start using is not to eat up all our free cash. To leave a specific, never drop below a certain level. In the draft, it's $300,000. So,
But we haven't figured out what our number is yet.
no.
Yeah, okay.
I think the Finance Committee, when they ever, after we get through the budget process or during it, they're going to recommend it be 300,000.
So 10% of the total revenue, because it's about 30 million, right? A $30 million budget.
Yeah, well,
1%.
Excuse me. Thank you. 10%.
yeah,
Yeah, 1%.
1%. But that doesn't have anything to do with the warrant right now.
Yep. All right.
Isn't it a little premature, though, to skip over the 100,000 if that other one does pass? Because we don't have any of those in operation right now. I mean, the plan is for it to be for 2021, right? But what happens if it's not, that we don't fund it, right? Or
Yeah.
it's not funded.
So technically,
You think we should do
both,
both?
you could do both.
You could always take out of the stab fund and put it back in free cash, though, right?
No,
You can't.
no, it can't go to free cash. It takes 2/3 vote to take it out of the stab fund, but it's for a specific purpose.
Did you have any of these worked into the budget? Or did you just fill some numbers in here for us?
No, these aren't budget items anyway. They would come out of, these would come out of free cash.
And what do we have?
Well, we have 640,000 in free cash.
300's going for the road, snow and ice.
Snow and ice is, yeah, I didn't get an updated number yet, but I think it's safe to say we're at 200,000 in deficit. So that would, if we can squeak by and stay at that level, we still have 400,000 in free cash. You couldn't do 100 and 100 and, you could,
but we
if you
could
did
change-
250, you'd be
But-
way below, but you can change the
If
number.
there was 100, we could change it as we head into
Yeah,
to May 6.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mike, are these just numbers that you plugged in for the
Yes.
sake of numbers?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And the same with the percentages? Or
Well,
where's-
the percentage, that's a minimum.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
But where's the finance committee on these? Have they,
They're for the percentage.
They sort of proposed that, I think.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
that's what I
that-
thought.
Now, should we go 33 and a half, or is this what they're recommending, the 25, 25, 25? I know you
They-
kept saying you put that there because that's the minimum you have to do.
Yeah, they haven't made a recommendation on what exactly the percentage would be.
Or, yeah, because we could change it up and down, as long as we keep each one at 25 or higher.
Yeah, I mean, you could do 33 and a third for all
Could
three
do
of those
50 into the
funds.
stab fund and 25 into the other two.
Yeah,
So they may give us a recommendation on that.
yeah.
So what do we need to do with
I
these
guess,
right now?
well, I guess we should leave them both on, both sets. And, because the Finance Committee hasn't even begun to look at the warrant articles. They will after, they have a meeting on Wednesday to finalize the budget. And then they'll have another meeting. They have 2 other Wednesdays they can meet. Their deadline is March 25th to finalize everything.
So Mike, as it stands right now,
March 27th, I'm sorry.
400,000 in free cash is what we're looking at as it stands right now?
That's my best estimate, yeah.
And do we foresee, other than other snowstorms, obviously, anything else we're looking at to pay with free cash?
Not at this point, no. I mean, CPC met last fall and made, there's a priority list, but we didn't, and the FinCom hasn't looked at that list either.
Okay.
Back to the annual town meeting. We went down to Article 5. Article 6 is just the Water Department budget. Article 7 is the ambulance budget. And just speaking of the ambulance budget, the Finance Committee voted not to fund, they voted to fund 4 firefighters, not 6. The 2 we have, we're in the process of, and then 2 more as of July 1. Part of their reasoning was by taking 50% of those, by paying 50% of those new firefighter positions out of ambulance, it would be weakening the ambulance fund, taking it down too low. And actually, they haven't been building it up over the last couple years. It's been being depleted at the rate of about 80,000 a year. And there's only 100, I have the exact number. It's about 160,000, 164,176 in the retained earnings. And they're going to have to buy another ambulance in another 3 to 5 years. And they're going to need anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000 to do that. So we need to, we can't be dipping into the ambulance fund for other firefighters.
So what's the reason for the account dropping? Is it being used for all salaries or operational costs are going up?
I think some of what got said with what they figured going ahead, they're getting more Medicare patients and less actual insurance that pays better. I remember that was
Right,
one of them.
yes.
That was, yeah. They had a projecting of what they were going to be getting, and it's not getting met because of the type of ambulance payouts that they're getting. They're getting more Medicare and than they.
Harry's right. The revenues are down.
Okay.
Water, fire, local access programming, we get about $100,000 a year from our cable fees, cable bills, and we have to stay within that revenue stream. At least we have not spent any general fund money on the cable access. And over the years, actually, and it used to be 80/20, and because of increase in pay, not so much, but increase in benefit costs, we've had to change it to 75/25. So, and then they make their budget, the committee really is in charge of making that budget. Consent calendar, same every year. Like department operations, chapter 90, we're getting, I think we ended up with $1,000 more than we did the year before. The revolving funds, they're staying the same as they were last year. Article after the end of the consent calendar, ATM 1912. This is primarily for the, it works for all town borrowing, but this is primarily for the the water department because of their bonding. Last year, they got $3.6 million, and they have to be specifically authorized to use any premium received when issuing the bonds, and that wasn't previously authorized. So this is more of a housekeeping effort because otherwise the money just sits in the treasury and can't be spent. So this there was a little confusion because when we got the email from our from treasurer and from our financial advisor, they stuck it on last year's bonding article, and it just got added to this. So this ATM 1913, this is just X out. That's not going to appear anywhere.
Which one's that?
The new water storage
thing,
tank
okay,
and
that's what I
water
thought.
main improvements.
Yep,
We
okay.
voted on that last year.
Last year, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, we were confused, like,
Well, I think last week you said you thought that was cleaning up some of it, but it sounds like the one before is the one that's doing the cleanup.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Then 1914, that's the authorizing the sale of National Ave property. The town meeting approval. ATM 1915, that's the water department merger with the light department. And the legislative language.
Yeah, just a quick question on that. Did anyone hear what if the independent study is done?
No,
It's
No.
not? Is it
I haven't heard. Don't know.
expected to be prior to town meeting?
Didn't know.
I thought so.
Yeah, Nick didn't know.
Okay.
So.
And then that brings us to the CPC articles, and I just got these from Harry today. We were carrying placeholders for the amounts. This is the actual language of the articles, so we'll plug those in now that we have them.
I can probably, if you got any questions, try to help. And the numbers that you have in the draft were as presented by the proponents, and what you've got here is what the community preservation voted to move forward.
I haven't, having just got them this afternoon, I didn't, are they not the same, some of
They're
them?
not the same as what's
Oh,
on the
okay,
draft.
we'll have to,
And one is off, the Camp Dennison roof phase was pulled, so that one's not there at all. So that may have possibly changed.
What's each all about?
What was that?
Well, on my, I'm looking on my, article on my computer here, but it has Pearlie Rec Center. Is that just in this one?
That got reduced to do the outside phase of that.
For the athletic courts.
Oh, that's for the athletic courts,
Outdoor
okay.
recreation.
Outdoor
I
recreation,
think it's
that's Pearlie, okay.
A total of 27,657.
Okay.
is it the same
It's
I?
G, it's G
Oh, G?
on
A
what they
new
sent
G.
over. Yeah,
Outdoor recreation at the Pearlie School.
Okay.
yeah, so something must have got pulled
Yeah, because
out.
on the computer, it had 56,649, so.
Yeah, so they'll have to
Doesn't show
change
it that
them
way.
as they are in the article to match these.
Can I ask a question about Article C, the housing authority lights?
Yes.
So Trestle Way, so why doesn't the state pay for that?
This is a question every year.
I know, yeah, that's what.
I can tell you that the vote was not unanimous, but, you know, a certain amount of the money is supposed to go towards affordable housing,
Right.
and they come under that. So they are allowed to make proposals, and then it gets voted on how, you know, whether they get moved forward to the town meeting floor. And it got voted to, you know, to move that one forward.
So are there other avenues that we can pursue with the state to do upgrades?
That got suggested
Well,
to
you know, I
the
mean,
person that was presenting,
well, if
yes.
you're gonna spend the 31,000, there's other things that we could do. If we don't have to spend it because there's state
Well, I
funding
mean,
for it, why would we do that?
You know, we're tasked with presenting this
Okay.
for the selectmen to put on the warrant,
Mm-hmm.
for the townspeople to vote, and that's, they voted to move that one forward at that price.
Okay.
Enough members, so like I said, I know it wasn't unanimous, some of them are unanimous, some of them are not.
Okay.
I can tell you how I voted. I can't tell you, I can't remember what everyone else did.
Yeah.
But
Seems like we're spending our own money.
I thought that should have got held off and that other funding get looked at, because the town just went through this, you know, and I was sort of like, why wasn't this part of, you know, what the town did? But we may not be allowed as a town to go into there because it's a safe facility, but yet under the community preservation law, we are allowed to do it. But you know, there's so much money out there today for these type of things.
Yeah, that's a
I
lot of-
personally
that's
felt
a
this
lot of
was just an easy avenue,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mike, where are we at?
Well, that clears up the annual warrant, annual town meeting warrant, then the other special town meeting.
Well, back to the ATM. ATM 1918 is not going to be on there, right? That's what we just spoke about with Longview and Maureen
Right,
Street, so that's coming off.
yeah, there's only
Martell
one,
coming off Chaplin,
street.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, unless you want to vote on some of these tonight, or all of them.
Well, we're at 10 o'clock, gentlemen. What do we want to do? Want to do it next meeting?
Yes.
All right, next meeting.
Next meeting will still work.
Okay, let's do that then.
And you'll have a complete document, everybody, all the deletions out and the additions in, so it'll be nice and clean.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Anything else, Mike, on that?
Not on the warrant.
Nope. Okay.
I haven't update on the budget.
Yep.
I can go through real quickly.
Okay.
Budget committee met last Wednesday. They're going to finalize this on Wednesday night. But in order to get from a $447,000 deficit, they had to make a few adjustments, to say the least. And what they ended up doing is these highlighted areas is where they made adjustments. They, under the school, and these are, they made it a point to say that this is up to the department to make any of the changes. They're not directing them to any specific line items, things like that. In one exception, actually. So the school budget was reduced by, let me start by the other adjustments. They are budgeting $200,000 in the marijuana, medicinal marijuana from HP in the budget.
Budgeted item.
The medical part of it?
In the revenue, yeah. The count
Happens to our agreement for medical that says it goes into the special account, so.
No, that was,
The DOR.
that's the three.
Problem is, we don't have 200,000. We'll get 150 in May.
No, but we get 200,000 in 2020.
May of 2020.
Yeah.
Actually, be June of 2020.
Well, it'll still be in the fiscal year. We're not touching, we haven't budgeted the 150 for this May, but they're budgeting the 200,000 that's contractually obligated by them for 2020.
So will the 150 go into the free cash?
Yes.
And that's part of what you're planning on the, or is that an
That doesn't
additional
get certified
That's
till
additional.
November.
to the figure?
Oh, yeah, no, that would be certified next fall. So
Okay.
it'd be added to whatever's, that would be new free cash in the fall.
Certified in the fall.
Yeah. So reduce the deficit by 200,000 by budgeting that money. They've also reduced the snow and ice deficit line item back to the 104. It was, they were going to try to budget another 100,000. We just don't have it this year. So we made up 300,000 in the deficit by those two moves. And then they voted 79,265 adjustment out of the school request. 52,000 out of the fire department, 20,000 out of the tree warden account, and 20,000 out of the library budget, and $6,000 out of the treasurer's budget. And that allowed them to balance the budget. The school number was really just backed into. They had all the other ones, and they still needed 79,265 to balance the budget, and they
The question, Mr. Chair.
tagged the school budget for it.
So where the money that you put in is expected till almost the end of the budget cycle, how do you see that working? Will during the year perhaps have to make some adjustments, or?
No, it'll all even out at the end. We know it's a contract, and DOR,
I guess what I'm saying, we generally have enough in reserves to carry us through that or will we have to make some changes in the reserve fund or?
no, there'll be, I mean, we don't get all our revenues in at a regular pace.
Agreed,
They
yeah.
all come in at a different time of the year. The car excise, they bill 3 times a year. The regular taxes, the real estate taxes are all in by May.
Well, that's 4 times a year also.
Yeah. But as long as we have enough, we have enough money, cash flow to cover
Okay.
our expenses,
Okay.
more than enough cash flow. It's just when we book the revenue.
Yeah.
That's a safe, relatively safe assumption. I mean, they could have a pesticide problem like they did the previous year, but, you know,
Well, I have a question for you, though, but you mentioned 200,000, but this sheet says 220. So where's the other 20 coming from?
that's from the, I think we talked about that. That's from the HP Healthy Farms money for, that's also in the,
Oh, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned $200,000, but this figure says 220.
Yeah.
So I'm asking where the extra 20 is coming from.
that's coming from HP. It's got to go in as a revenue before we can spend it on a line item.
Well, I guess what I'm getting to is we're not getting $220,000. We're going to receive $200,000.
But the budget calls for 20,000 for, the agreement calls for 20,000 separately for,
Oh, okay, all right. That's why I was wondering where that came from.
yeah. It's two streams of money,
Right,
so,
okay.
yeah, because I had the 20 in there.
Yeah, well, I saw that
Before.
up here at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
But then I saw, you mentioned 200, and I saw 220.
Yeah.
For the
And I didn't
potential,
know where that was
those 2
coming
other
from.
guys,
Okay.
or people, I should say.
It's coming from HP.
that don't
Well,
run the
I
low
know
side.
that,
Yeah.
but I mean, the extra $20,000 is what, I wasn't connecting it with Georgetown Cares and this number, is all.
So Mike, is there any way to lessen the load on the schools? You know, that's a big number, you know, to back out of their budget, 80 grand. Especially when, again, a lot of that 80 grand, I would think, is resulting from the sped costs that they incurred this year, which was about $300,000 in additional sped costs.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, we need to understand that as a board.
Yeah.
All right? I just
Well-
want to make sure, you know, we do understand that.
one not big unknown, but one of the unknowns is under other, right under education.
Yeah.
We do know what medical insurance and county retirement is, but I'm not going to know what all those other insurances are until a week from today. I've built in a 5% increase, but I don't know that that's going to cover it. So we may be short more money.
Have you heard from,
Maya,
Maya?
they said anywhere between 5 and 10%.
Oh, they said that last year, too.
Yeah, that's what they say every year. But
Do we have to go through that same exercise we went through last year?
no, that was for health insurance. The property and liability insurance,
Oh, it's probably-
that's a different underwriting process. And it's based on our claims record, more so than even the health insurance is.
Unemployment insurance, is that an insurance, or that's just a figure that we carry as our own insurance?
We need to payroll tax?
Yeah, because we have to pay that, we pay whatever is owed. We're not, that's
Yeah, so
not really
That's not really an
insurance.
insurance,
Yeah.
that's just a figure that you're budgeting
Yes,
for unemployment, and that's what they call it, is in,
yeah.
yeah.
Workers' comp, that's a, that's a number we're given.
Yeah.
And that number actually includes workers' comp for employees, and it also includes coverage for the firefighters and police. They're not in the workers' comp system.
Yeah.
They have their own, we have to buy a separate insurance policy to cover them.
What's our experience rate for that? I mean, are we doing well not using it, or?
Workers' comp?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had,
Usually, wouldn't that mean that it would go down if your experience rate isn't that high?
We got hit large.
yeah, it does, except the state establishes the rates, and they went up last year. I don't know, well, I don't know I don't think the states are raising the rates, but, and we did have we had one horrific claim several years ago. It was the largest workers' comp claim in Maya's history. And luckily, that experience modification rate has fallen off.
Gotcha.
I mean, it was over $2.5 million.
So Mike, back to my question. Regarding the education and
That's up to the finance committee. I don't know where they would find more money.
I mean, if we're looking for 300 on free cash, and we have a little over 4, is there any finagling that we can do?
Well, one of the dings we got on our bond rating was that in effect creates a operating deficit by using free cash, and they don't like that at all.
Well, is there anything we can pay out of free cash that we can then transfer over?
No, you have to put it in the revenue section. free cash if you're gonna
If I'm gonna pay.
balance any of these other line items.
I can, you know, I talked to Mike earlier, and that still keeps their increase. I know it doesn't meet what they put forward, but they've got the largest budget, and that still keeps their increase up at over 4%.
But part of that number, Gary,
When the
is,
town's allowed to only go up 2.5, so,
but again, in that number, Gary, is that sped cost.
I agree.
I mean, that's,
I
that, they have
understand.
nothing they can do about that.
I
And
understand.
they have to incur that, they get nothing, well,
I've been to all the
nothing
meetings.
per se. I don't want to be insensitive, but, you know, there's, again, no other department starts their year like that. You know, where, hey, you get another $300,000 in costs, you know, bang, bang, just like that. So, you know, again, I'm not saying we have to recapture 80 grand, but, you know,
I mean,
maybe, is there anything we can do to be creative to
Actually, thought they-
soften the load, or?
I thought they got it hit rather lightly, so compared to some of the others. What's
the tree warden? I mean, it's only 12, but that includes
You know, it would be helpful if the
230%.
state would pay their full 75%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
For
well
for
put.
that,
yep.
you know?
That, the 12,000 that was in there, as part of truth in budgeting, Peter had that in his maintenance line item of the highway, and I suggested he put it where it belonged, and he was gonna add an additional 20,000, I think, to combat anticipated gypsy moth damage. But, so that was a new expansion of services, so that's why that got cut.
You had a handout at the finance committee on a new state law. Was it for like a revolving fund for the,
That's what they're taking out.
Yeah,
does that need any movement this year, or is that something that needs more time to hash over?
I think that's going to be a good topic of discussion for the fall town meeting.
Okay.
I think I still have enough copies.
I have one, I think.
Yeah.
I think you gave me one.
I think we seriously have to consider establishing a stabilization fund for special education.
Any more of these?
I'm okay.
That I only have my copy.
You can read on with it.
We can establish a fund as up to 2% of total net school spending, which based on FY19 budget of, would be $365,000. Now we have to identify a funding source, and, you know, it could be, that could be funded with new free cash in the fall. You know, if we still have 400,000 in free cash and we get another 150, we know we're going to get 150. It gives us 550, and we could, you know, maybe not fully funded, but put something in that fund.
Start growing it.
Yeah, and this requires town meeting approval to set it up, and then it requires approval by the school committee and, no, and the selectmen to spend it.
Selectmen?
Yeah. So,
I think I'll have to think about that one.
Do we have an estimate for new growth yet, or do you usually get that?
We got that at 100,000 this year.
we're only anticipating, 100,000.
100,000?
That's baked into the budget.
Okay.
It's an idea, you know?
All right. Thank you for the update. Mike, any questions for Mike on this for right now? No? Okay. Let's move on. It seems like we have to do this every meeting, but there's no rush on the Christmas tree lighting charge, right, Mike?
No.
Nope, so let's skip that over. So for the Humboldt, let me just read that. So notice is hereby given that a community outreach meeting for a proposed marijuana establishment is scheduled for March 15th, 2019 at 4 p.m. at the Georgetown Peabody Library located at 2 Maple Street, Georgetown, Mass. 01833. The proposed cultivation facility is anticipated to be located at 2 Norino Way, Georgetown, Mass. 01833. There will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions. I encourage everybody who is interested to go down at 4 o'clock and have that conversation.
What was the date again?
March 15th, which I believe is Friday.
Yeah.
All right. We need to approve minutes for February 25th.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the Board of Selectmen's meeting from February 25th, 2019, as presented.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion on that?
Just one quick thing. First page, it says Mr. Journey stated that they would serve alcohol until 11. I didn't tell them when they could serve alcohol. It was more that I just asked them if they were going to serve up to 11. So just a clarification.
So do we need up to in there?
Just asked. Mr. Journey asked. It says stated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All right. All those in favor of approving that?
Do we have a second? We need a second?
Yeah, you have a motion and a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, fantastic. Moving forward, I think that's it on the agenda. Doug has something that he would
Yes.
like to present.
As you all know, the Board of Selectmen started a subcommittee that is subsequently named the Georgetown Cares Coalition Committee. And I know that as kids, we all found places to hide things from our parents. And kids still do it now. And
Not me, I was an angel.
yeah, you were perfect. So anyhow, on March 19th, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., we will be presenting a program called Hidden in Plain Sight, an initiative to help parents, caregivers spot signs of risky behavior. This special exhibit will be at the Pearly School Library. You can join, it's a free exhibit for adults over 21 only, and explore all the ways substance use, risky behaviors, and internet dangers can be hidden in plain sight. Learn some red flags, talk to local experts, and take home some resources to help you, your teen, or loved one. No RSVP necessary, just drop in. So there'll be guided tours every 30 minutes. I don't know if you want to zoom in on that, but it'll be a setup of a kid's bedroom. And you'll be able to walk through and try to find where everything's hidden. And you'd be surprised. But we do ask you to come by. It'll be an informative session. It's also, the monies for this have come from the cannabis industry and Healthy Farms that were able to help pay for this. And so come on down, March 19th, 6:30 to 8:30 at the Pearly School Library. Thank you.
Fantastic. Anybody else have anything to add? No? All right, fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for staying up. Can I hear a motion to adjourn, please?
Are we done?
Yes, we are done. Oh, yeah. Did we hear a motion? A motion and a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone.
Took us a little bit. We're all dumbfounded.
Man, we see this agenda.